Monday, and we'll see how it actually works.
Absolutely fascinating, and shows the strains out there, not only in the real economy, but also within the Dartmouth bubble as well. Professor Blanchflower, you are definitive on the dynamics of wages. What are our wages going to do given the impulse, the shock, the exogenous shock we have all felt?
Well, it's a great question. We don't really have much data to tell us exactly what's going to happen, but this looks like a giant shock. I mean, Goldman Sachs has talked about 2.5 million today. That number the number actually may well be higher. California, and the governor of California said yesterday there's 1 million in California already. So the answer is this will have a downward effect on wage growth, which is already kind of lower than you would have thought. I mean, people are not going to be giving wage increases, so we're going to see probably a big drop downwards in that. I mean, the issue here is, what are people actually going to do? I mean, okay, they filed for unemployment claims. They know some money's coming to them, but presumably they're fearful. And obviously the big question is, how are they going to change their behavior? Are they going to stop spending? Do they think this job is going to come back? These are all things that we just don't know the answer to, but obviously the hope is that people will think the central bank, the Fed, the government is on top of this and trying to help. So that, in a sense, it is the government that's strong but gentle father's hand, which I hope people think that it is. But we are going to see numbers, I think, at 8:30, though. I mean, I think the biggest number we ever saw before was 695,000 increase in 1982, and it's quite clear we're going to see a number many multiples higher than that today.
Danny, when we get into a moment of economic and financial market stress, we typically get a much bigger range of listeners on a program like this. And for those that aren't familiar with your voice, Danny, you are a labour market expert. And what I've been trying to understand over the last couple of weeks is the damage done to the labour market in just a couple of weeks, how much longer that will take to repair even after this economy reopens.
Well, I think it's a really great question, John. Yes, my expertise is on labour markets and on shocks to labour market. We've never really seen anything much like this. So the question in the labour market is this going to be a V-shape where people think this is a temporary thing, I've been helped, and we'll bounce back to where we were? My suspicion is people will not think that. They'll think this beast, this virus is not going to go away, and it may well have permanent effects on the labour market. For example, are people going to go back to sitting in offices with lots of other people with an expectation that this thing is coming again in the fall? So and are they going to be happy about being a Uber driver and all of that with the exposures that are given? So I think the expectation is that this will have a permanent effect on the labour market. The question is good or ill. I mean, more people are going to work from home. That's going to have an effect. So I would say it's inevitable there's going to be huge effects on the labour market. What they are, we don't really know. Some of them might well be positive. I mean, some of them, people cut down their commuting time, and the thing which impacts people's happiness is commuting. So there are positive possibilities, but at the moment we're seeing an absolutely devastating collapse in the labour market in this country and elsewhere. In the UK, my home country, 500,000 people, in the last few days applied for basically unemployment benefits. Never seen numbers like that.
Danny,
so it's not unique to the US.
Use this word happiness, and behind this number at 8:30 Eastern will be a lot of economic pain. And to reflect on the work of the late, great Professor Alan Kruger, who really used to give people a deep understanding of the people, the stories behind the labour market. Just walk us through the psychological pain and economic pain behind the statistics we'll be reading out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so it's a great question. My dear old friend Alan, who passed this year, and obviously we miss him greatly. I mean, Alan used to tell, as you say, these stories, and the stories that he and I have written about is that we know that that becoming unemployed is one of the biggest hits downwards to people's well-being and happiness, and the longer that the people are unemployed for, the bigger the impact. And I think the other thing Alan talked a lot about was about uncertainty. And so this is a really uncertain world. I mean, okay, so you were laid off from your job yesterday. You know some money's coming from the government. You don't know when you're going to get it. And even if your firm is there, you don't know if it's going to reopen and when it's going to be reopening. Is the firm going to die before things return to normal? So this is a big effect on people. How big an effect we're going to see, but People clearly are going to be scared, and they're going to think, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my mortgage? What's going to happen in the months ahead? And so Alan's work tells us a lot about that. And we're going to watch, and we're going to wait, and we're going to see. But a number like we're going to see at 8:30 is going to scare people a lot. And these are real people. These are real millions of people who were at work 2 days ago and aren't at work now, and they don't know what's coming. And so it's not just the fear of the virus, it's the fear about their economic future. And so this is a really big deal.
And that very human story about confidence, about optimism, about certainty that's all been stripped away is consolidated often, or people try to look for hints at that when you look at the consumer confidence numbers or some of these other data points. And I'm just wondering what the historical precedent is for a huge drop-off in consumer confidence and what that means for an economy going forward.
Well, huge drop-offs in consumer confidence have clearly occurred in 2008 and occurred during the 1930s. We don't exactly know what's going to happen. But I would go back to John's point. And Alan talked about this too. There is something to be said when people think we're all in this together. So, if you're on your own and it happens to you, that's a little bit different from realizing that all the people in your street, all the people in the firm that you were in, were in the same position. So you might think that there can be a kind of community spirit where people think we're all in this together. And in some sense, politicians have talked about being, a war leader. Well, that's what happens in wartime. People kind of muck in together. So obviously people are concerned about, what happens. Consumer confidence may fall, but there is some comfort when everybody else is in the same position. Relative things matter. So that is some comfort. And people, in a sense, they have to make sure that they're physically distancing, not social distancing, because the problem with downward shocks to income and to employment is that people are isolated, and this is a really big concern. But if they can communicate, then things may well be better than we thought.
David, what's so great here is at the office we've got the surveillance library, which is Premier League football led, including Cardiff football. At home here, I can hold in my hands while talking to you Blanchflower and Oswald, The Wage Curve, MIT Press from a few years ago.
Yeah, you also have your comfort.
Not working. My new Princeton University Press one not working too.
Right. And I must note the wonderful quote on the back of this book from the late Alan Kruger. David Blanchflower, thank you so much. Greatly, greatly appreciated on this historic day. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. The U.S. Senate approved a historic $2 trillion rescue plan to respond to the economic and health crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic, putting pressure on the Democratic-led House to pass the bill quickly and send it to President Trump for signature. The legislation passed on a 96-0 vote in the Senate just before midnight after days of intense negotiations between Senate Republicans and Democrats. California's top medical advisor says that coronavirus cases continue to double, now at a pace on par with New York. Dr. Mark Galey expects a great surge in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Today, we feel like we're looking at our doubling rate. We originally thought that it would be doubling every 6 to 7 days. We see cases doubling every 3 to 4 days, and we're watching that trend very, very closely.
Meanwhile, New Orleans is on track to become the next coronavirus epicenter in the U.S., dashing hopes that less densely populated and warmer climate cities would not be hit as hard by the pandemic. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards states his opinion on the country being able to reopen soon.
From where I sit, any date to reopen the economy fully, if it's a date certain, it has to be aspirational because we are still very much on the fight here. The numbers continue to climb. We're on a trajectory that is not looking good for us.
Leaders of the world's most powerful economies will convene virtually to coordinate a response to the fast-spreading coronavirus. Today's meeting for the group of 20 nations was being chaired by Saudi Arabia's King Salman. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much from New York City this morning. Good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keane and Lisa Ravitz, I'm Jonathan Ferro. As we count you down towards the market open, 1 hour and 17 minutes away. Equity futures down a little more than 2 percentage points. Session lows on the S&P 500, negative 55 points. In the bond market, decent bid into treasuries, much bigger bid into the European sovereign debt market as the ECB comes in big time. Yields down 50 basis points over in Greece. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 63
is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are the magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. The National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. The Bank of England saying it's ready to provide more support for the economy as it opted against introducing an immediate additional stimulus measures to combat the economic impact of the coronavirus. Interest rates were left at a record low 0.1% after officials cut them from 0.75% at 2 emergency meetings this month. month. U.S. futures are declining along with European shares as investors look past stimulus packages to the mounting human impact of the coronavirus outbreak. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 51 points. Dow futures down 380. NASDAQ futures down 125. The DAX in Germany is down 2.8%. 10-year Treasury up 26.30 seconds, yield 0.78%. Yield on the 2-year 0.29%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.8% or 94 cents at $23.54 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.7% or $10.80 at $16.45 an ounce. The euro 1.0936 against the dollar. British pound 1.1966 and the yen at 109.92. The VIX at 65.38. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. Karen mentioning the Treasury market there, a decent bid into Treasuries this morning, yields lower, huge bid into the European bond market this morning as well, Tom, not just in Italy, but in Greece, seeing yields come down 48, 50 basis points through the curve, largely off the back of a big move from the ECB to get into the market this morning.
You know, a lot of people think we slide in. John, you get up at, 6:45, and you're trying to get ready to get there in the next 15 minutes at home. I mean, I get it. But the truth is, folks, we've been up doing a lot of what all of Global Wall Street doing is, which is late at night, reading. John, I went through an exercise about 2 a.m. and tried to pretend there wasn't a crisis. And I said, if I looked at the screen, and particularly at the bond market, what would it look like if I didn't know there was a viral crisis out there? It was a really odd exercise.
It was 2 a.m., that's why.
No, maybe it was a 2 a.m. Maybe it was the third scotch that helped. Kathy Jones is with Charles Schwab. Kathy Jones is with Charles Schwab. She's in charge of scotch for Charles Schwab along with Liz Ann Saunders. Kathy, all joking aside, it's been price up. There's a point where it goes the other way. Is the outcome of this crisis that we finally see price lower and yield higher?
Well, I think eventually, but we've got a long way to go before we get to that point, I think. It looks like the Fed will probably be at zero for a couple of years. We're going to have a pretty deep recession here that we have to get past. We'll have to get people back to work, businesses up and running, and then we'll worry about inflation expectations and the budget deficit and all that. But that's a couple of years down the road, I think.
Okay, so a couple years down the road. For the moment, a lot of people seem to think that it's deflationary because we're about to get this jobless numbers that probably will be pretty ugly. How low could benchmark yields in the U.S. go? How low could the 10-year yield go in this cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we have a low around, 25 to 50 basis points as kind of our bottom end of the range. And that's because, again, you have, Fed at zero. If we get a deflationary impulse from this contraction in the economy, you could probably see, shorter-term yields continue to move into negative territory. And you probably wouldn't see the long end go into negative territory, but it could get awfully close if things don't pick up pretty quickly.
What do you think of the fiscal package that's been enacted down in Washington? What kind of a difference does that make, Kathy?
Well, it helps in a number of ways. We focus a lot on the municipal bond market because a lot of our clients are invested there. I think providing direct aid to the states in a number of different ways is positive. I think trying to get this money into the hands of consumers and small business is positive. Devoting money to the health care, public funding of health care is a positive, directly addressing the core problem, which is, of course, the coronavirus. So I think in general it should definitely help the economy, and, it's just going to take time.
Kathy, the bonds market is across a long duration. Where should people be? I mean, it's like a bond 101 question, but it's actually quite germane right now. What kind of duration do I want to think about buying with the cash that I have?
Yeah, we've been a little bit short of, so if the benchmark is the ag and the Bloomberg Barclays ag, and that duration is around 8 or so, you probably want to be short of the midpoint, probably under the 5-year mark or even shorter at this stage of the game. We never want to totally abandon, having some duration in the portfolio because, look, it's helped a lot over the last couple of years. But right now we're looking at more of a barbell strategy, some short and some intermediate term because...
Yeah, but you don't want to go long? You don't want to go out to 20, 30 years here in terms of a barbell?
You could. I wouldn't argue against that in this environment, but again, I think it's going to come down to every individual investor's need, but few people are investing for 25, 30 years at this stage of the game.
Kathy, when you talk about barbell, I remember when people used to say barbell the risk, treasuries on one side and high-yield bonds on the other. We've seen the Fed come in and backstop investment-grade bonds in the credit space in addition to their purchases of government debt. How about high yield at this point? What is the prospect there, given the fact the Fed is not buying those securities? We're expecting a huge wave of fallen angels. And frankly, defaults are expected to pick up regardless of any stimulus plan from Washington.
Yeah, high yield's still going to be under stress. So we were underweight for quite some time from last year, and we actually are just starting to move back to neutral because the spreads have widened so much now. I think it's discounted a lot of bad news. But that being said, high yield's got a lot of problems ahead of it. These fallen angels are large, and the size of the buying market for high yield is not that large. So there's going to be a lot of supply to absorb, and with no backstop from the government, it seems very likely that we'll see defaults pick up pretty dramatically here in that market. So probably more discounting of that to go.
Kathy, big thanks to you. Kathy Jones from Charles Schwab. Send our best to the team over at Charles Schwab, won't you, Kathy? Great to catch up with you this morning. Kathy Jones there on the bond market, ahead of a read on initial jobless claims in America, guys. And Tom, Lisa, this one is going to be difficult to read in about 60 minutes, and it's expected to blast through many of the records set in very, very deep recessions in years gone by.
Yeah, I'm struck by the idea of, is a big number bad or good? Yes, it's terrible because it means a lot of people are getting laid off, but we know that already. If they're actually filing for unemployment benefits, they may be getting an income. And to Danny Blanchflower's point, they're all in it together. It's not like this is an esoteric kind of moment.
I looked at New York State, Lisa. It's a maximum 504. It's $26,000 something a year, and you enjoy paying taxes on that. Fine. But I mean, for a huge body of people in expensive cities like New York, it doesn't go very far.
No, but we already know people are getting laid off. It's a disaster. Period. The end. I'm trying to look for some silver lining. It's hard.
Here's the price action this morning. Equity futures down 56, negative a little more than 2 percentage points. From New York City, for our audience worldwide, this is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are the magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. The National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with little Rocky. Unfortunately, little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have. I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. I started as a care worker, but with all the training on the job, I'm now a manager here, looking after people like Mimi.
Greg really believes in me and has supported me to make better choices in my life.
6 years ago, I worked in security, keeping people out of places. Now I open doors for people instead. It's a great feeling.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. We bring you some economic data out of America now with Vinny Dajudice.
Jobless claims a very big canary in the coal mine for the economy. 3.3 million last week, with rounding a post-World War II high. An orchestrated shutdown of the economy. 3.3 million jobless claims last week, 3.283 with rounding. We had been at roughly a half-century low for so long. Again, this is a health emergency. It's about saving lives. Bloomberg Economics says, look for more of this ahead. Hard times for many. Jobless claims, 3.3 million with rounding, topping forecasts. March unemployment, economists say, look for it to nudge up to 4% from a half-century low, and surely it's going to go much, much higher. Again, jobless claims, 3.3 million last week with rounding. I'm Vinny Dajudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thank you. Thank you very much. A really difficult number to process. We'll do our best to do that in the next couple of hours on Bloomberg Radio. In the bond market, yields were lower going into the print. They're lower coming out of it. We're down 8 basis points to 0.786% on a US 10-year. The dollar on the session against the bulk of G10 weaker for much of this morning. That is where things stay. The US dollar, the dollar index down 0.7%. The smallest bounce on equity futures, still near session lows. We're down by around about 1 percentage point on the S&P 500. Tom, a really, really tough number to read this morning.
Comes in on survey among a number of people, including Ellen Zentner, Morgan Stanley, plus $1 million, minus $1 million. I go immediately, John, to, you know what? We do it in 7 days again. It's a weekly statistic, and I don't know, what do you add on next week? 2 million? Or is it 4 million? And add them both up, and it's a stunning 14 days of data that we're going to see forward.
It's ugly. Let's bring in Tom Porcelli, shall we? RBC Capital Markets Chief US Economist. Tom, we knew the number was going to be bad. There's a lot of economic pain behind that economic statistic. Walk me through how we should be processing a number like that in the weeks to come.
I mean, let me first start by saying, honestly, we thought that there was a risk the number could be even worse than that. We're trying to. We're in a period where sort of the standard economic data that we all like to look at, economists like to look at, that's not really going to be very helpful right now. So we're trying to find sort of, let's call it alternative data that we can sort of scour to try to get a sense for, how the backdrop is evolving on a live basis. And one thing we found was this sort of interesting piece of data from something called Homebase. Homebase is basically a company that allows small businesses to manage schedules and et cetera, et cetera. And so when we were looking at that recently, and the great thing about this data is it actually comes in daily. And when we were looking at that data, I mean, that data really started to scare the heck out of us. I mean, we literally thought that you could see a 5 to 10 million claims number today. So 3 million, I have to be honest, I think relative to expectations is actually pretty modest. And in fact, I think that the futures are even responding to it. I mean, the futures have taken back some of the decline. So, look, I think the reality is as we go forward, on a go forward basis, I think that this is just the beginning of claims remaining incredibly elevated. Again, I think data like this Homebase, I think are really indicative of some real pain in the labor backdrop.
Tom Purcelli, what is the average income of those 3.3 million people? What kind of jobs are those? Do you have some rough statistic of what the average take-home pay is of all this?
Well, what I would say is this: if you look at sort of where some of the, again, if we're just using this, I mean, I'm giving these guys this free plug. If we keep on using this Homebase, I think it's really interesting. If you look at some of where the really big declines came from, some of the really big declines came in. What we would define as sort of more of the the lower income areas. So food and drink, that saw some very sizable declines. Personal care saw some very sizable declines. So right now, I think it's very easy to make the case that a lot of the jobs that are being lost are in the lower income spectrum.
Tom, one thing that we've been talking a lot about is the speed of this happening and the speed of the response or lack thereof in terms of trying to prevent companies from laying people off to start with. And perhaps one way to read this number is the layoffs have already begun to such a degree in mass that there is a question how much is reversible at this point. We are expecting the bill to pass in Congress shortly, but from that perspective, given the fact that we're seeing the layoffs already taking place in a mass way, how concerning is it that this damage is irreversible in the short term? No, I wouldn't take that tact on this. I would say that in fact, I would even take the opposite view. I think if you could see a massive amount of layoffs straight away, and then you can start to plane out on some level, right? So the question then becomes, how long is social distancing going to remain in place? Again, the degree to which it is in place right now. And that's where this is a very time-sensitive conversation, which, again, I think is an idea that is being is elusive to a lot of folks. So if this goes until the end of April, right, let's say, extreme social distancing in the United States goes to the end of April, then it's really easy. Then you can actually come to a reasonable conclusion on what sort of growth is going to be. And so again, this is really illustrative. So just bear with me for a second. So right now we're looking for, about, let's just say round numbers, about 10% decline in Q2 growth. And that's assuming that severe social distancing basically starts to come to an end toward the end of April, sort of beginning of May. If we slide that out, social distancing, extreme social distancing to the end of May instead, then all of a sudden our minus 10 becomes minus 15%. Right, so you see the time so there's sort of a sliding scale on this, and that's why I say time sensitivity is critical. Because if all of a sudden, Dr. Fauci or any of the other folks that are talking about the numbers, if all of a sudden they say, hey, it looks like the numbers are starting to stabilize, we're getting toward the peak. Once you get toward the peak, whenever that might be, that's when you can actually start to have the conversation of, okay, now we can talk about how we're going to reopen things. And so to me, that's a critical part of this conversation. It's all about time. So if all of a sudden that happens in the next handful of weeks, then I don't think this necessarily has to keep on going south. I think you can actually get some stabilization.
So Tom, to be clear here then, you can't really have a second half call until we get to the end of April. Would that be fair?
I mean, well, I have to have a second half call.
I understand, but just in terms of getting a really clear look at the outlook.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It's really difficult to know what the second half is going to be until we all know what social distancing and the degree to which we are willing to take that is going to look like. But right now, again, if our view that this is basically an end of April, beginning of May issue, then you can easily have a rebound in the second half of the year.
Can we just talk about where we've got to in the space of a month, Tom? It is absolutely remarkable. We started this month with Fed funds in and around where? 175, and we've come down 150 basis points. We've got QE, helicopter money, and an initial jobless claims print of 3, 4, 5 million that some people think we might get in the coming weeks as well, in the space of a couple of weeks, Tom.
Yeah, it's been dramatic, and again, I think others have tried to make this point, including us, and I'll try to make it again. I think what we have to keep in mind is that this is something that we're forcing. Right, we're forcing this. Right, we're making people stay home. I mean, it has a critical idea. If this was a standard recessions are very different than what we're living through right now. This is something in a lot of ways because of social distancing. We have created this dynamic, obviously for our health. I mean, it's something we obviously need to do. Again, that's why I say it depends how long that goes on for, because you can unwind it. It's a question of time. The longer it goes, the more damage you're gonna leave in its wake.
Yeah. Well, Tom, Vinny Del Giuda is making a really good point. Hats off to the state agencies for processing all of these claims and the idea that, all of these people did file to receive unemployment benefits, and they are going to be receiving some income in very short order. Is there any silver lining in that you can take away?
You meaning what? The fact that they're going to be receiving their unemployment insurance benefits? I mean,
that basically is as long that it's not a huge disruption completely to the point where people won't be able to afford food unless you live on the Upper East Side next to Tom.
I mean, far be it from me to judge how other people are going to deal with any situation. I'm not here to do that. I'm sure that this is going to be extremely painful for some people, and some people will be able to endure it just fine. That's for other people to comment on. But what I would say is, it's very clear, given some of the plans that have been coming out of Washington D.C., that obviously individuals are focused. I mean, they're going to upsize unemployment insurance claims, the amount that you can get. They're also going to extend out the period over which you get unemployment insurance claims. So there's a lot being done.
Chairman Powell on NBC earlier this morning speaking to Main Street, Tom Porcelli. Tom, we've been critical of the chairman in the past. Your take on his performance and the Federal Reserve's moves over the last couple of weeks? Are they starting to see some signs of success?
Yeah, no, Jonathan, I'm a fan. I like what they've done. And I'm obviously not talking about his Today Show appearance. I mean, in just terms of the bigger, the programs that they're laying out there, I think that they were aggressive. They didn't wait. They had a lot of these teed up already because of the financial crisis, and so they just started unloading. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was funny. In a lot of ways, they put out some of these programs so quickly. I got a phone call from one of our front end traders, and they said, "Hey, we don't know what the settlement instructions are for one of these programs," because the programs were just coming out in mass and so quick that some of the data weren't easy to find. So I'm a fan. I think a lot of what they've put a lot of stimulus in place between monetary and fiscal authorities. And again, if we're right that this thing can actually, if we can start to see an easing, not a completely going away, but an easing in social distancing by the end of April, beginning of May, there's so much stimulus in place. I think calling for a pretty good rebound in the second half of the year is not a stretch.
Well, in the second half, quite clearly, the Fed's objective would be to provide some stimulus for a recovery. But in the immediate term, it's to provide some easing of financial conditions and to really target what's happening with market functioning. On market functioning, Tom, some of the problems of the last couple of weeks, have they eased a lot? A little bit? What's your assessment of that?
My assessment, speaking with some of our traders, is that they're starting the process of easing. There's no question about that. That doesn't mean that the problems are gone, but you have to start somewhere. And the somewhere is things seem to be getting better from a liquidity perspective. It's not that they're completely healed, but they're starting the process of getting better.
Tom Porcelli of RBC. My best to you and the team over at RBC, and to you and yours as well, Tom. Always great to get your thoughts on this programme. Initial jobless claims surging to a record 3.28 million last week. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide. We can do that from New York with Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John, Tom, Lisa. The Senate has unanimously passed the $2 trillion COVID-19 rescue package. The vote late last night was 96-zip and now goes to the House. Democrats scored a key political victory in the bailout bill by securing independent oversight of money heading to distressed businesses. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro has more.
When it comes to the aid going to small businesses, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says banks will be allowed to make same-day loans.
This will cover roughly 50% of the private payroll in small businesses.
But for the $500 billion headed to large corporations, Republicans agreed to Democrats' demand for an independent inspector general to monitor the flow of money and a 5-member panel appointed by Congress to oversee the bailout program. Guardrails that could slow the flow of cash. Mnuchin's department's already understaffed, and some lawmakers are concerned the independent monitors will provide only minimal protection against waste and fraud. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
With coronavirus cases inside New York City doubling every few days, the chief medical officer of Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan calls the COVID-19 pandemic the humanitarian mission of our lifetime. Doctors are struggling to keep up with the steadily increasing influx of patients. At Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, at least 13 people died in just 24 hours. Dr. Colleen Smith works with the Department of Emergency Medicine at the hospital.
There's no clear end to this. This could go on for a month or 2 months. As it was 5 months in China.
In the U.S., there are more than 69,000 cases of the virus with more than 1,000 deaths. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Michael. Just to sort of repeat what we're looking at today, U.S. jobless claims hitting a record 3.3 million as people flood to the unemployment benefits lines to get some sort of reprieve after getting laid off in the wake of coronavirus shutdowns. We're seeing futures actually off earlier lows as, frankly, investors weigh potentially an even worse outcome than this. We're looking right now at S&P futures down just about 1%. Meanwhile, in the bond market, a bid in. It was a strong bid to start the day. It still is a strong bid, sort of staying there as people reflect, Tom, on what we're looking for. The lack of certainty really is the trend of the moment, this feeling of we don't know what we don't know. This is unprecedented, uncharted, and it's unclear how quickly we can really recover from this.
Yeah, you see this, folks, some of the real minutiae stuff that we sometimes talk about, but to be blunt, very rarely talk about. For example, Mexican peso stronger here today, and you wonder, as Jordan Rochester of Nomura mentioned earlier, about the dollar liquidity story. Is that really a story of the past, of the shock of the past few weeks? And, we'll have to see on that. We'll do some data here, but far more importantly, want to drive forward the conversation. Marcus Ashworth writes brilliant pieces for Bloomberg Opinion on market dynamics. He's had a few just chestnuts this year and back into 2019. Very prescient on the market. And as always, Michael McKee is with us. And Michael, in all the years I've known you, this is just truly an historic moment. I use the word unimaginable for this statistic today. Are we going to be unimaginable in 7 days as well?
I think that's a good possibility. We heard a lot of anecdotal reports that people couldn't get through to their unemployment insurance claims office, either on a computer or on a phone, and I'm sure that it was hard to get in the offices. So we could probably see another big number. I don't know if it will be quite as big, but a very big number next week.
Marcus Ashworth, I'm wondering how an investor reads any of this data. When does it matter in terms of deciding how long this is going to last, considering the fact that every economist that we speak to says, well, we have to come up with something to predict, but we have no idea?
I think investors are very much, we're all in the same boat here. I think that the point here is that people will be expecting this number to get worse. It's really the reaction from the White House and Congress, etc., to it. As at the moment, the epicenter may well be Europe, but it's shifting, certainly in investors' minds, already has shifted very much to the United States and the reaction thereof, and how liquidity and dollar liquidity has been the key driving factor of this whole crisis. It slammed things like the British pound because, whatever the UK does, it's an irrelevance if everyone's off the dollar liquidity. And numbers like this obviously are continuing to keep the volatility at a very high level. We've seen some big margin calls come out of one or two of the banks today, and a couple of futures brokers and things like that getting a real sense of disarray. So, unfortunately, investors cannot breathe or stop holding their breath, should we say.
Yeah, and Mike, just to confuse the numbers even more, there have been a number of employers that have laid off their employees on purpose rather than furloughing them in order to allow them to get unemployment benefits. Can you talk a little bit about what we've heard and sort of if we've gotten any guidance from companies about rehiring after or moves like that that might also color some of the figures here?
Yeah, you raise a very important point because the stimulus bill just passed by the Senate last night contains provisions for loans to companies to maintain payroll, but there are different dates for different loans, and it isn't clear if you have laid off people whether you can bring them back, get the loan, and pay them as part of your payroll. And of course, there were some Republican senators last night who did not like the fact that in some cases people, at least who make minimum wage or a little above, would get paid more by being on unemployment than they would by staying on the payrolls. So kind of a confused situation right now. Nobody really knows what the best thing to do if you're an employer or an employee is at this point.
Well, Michael, this is a really important point. Anybody that follows me on Twitter knows I've mentioned it repeatedly over the last number of days. Michael McKee, can you explain to me the insanity that a $1,200 check in, you named the city, West Lafayette, Indiana, a $1,200 check that Rachel's going to get in West Lafayette, Indiana, is of the same value as a $1,200 check that's going to be out on Long Island somewhere? Two suburbs out on Long Island?
Obviously, the two cost of livings are very
they're
different.
Miles apart.
But that's what ends up happening. You take a look at what they did in the tax bill with ending the state and local property tax deduction. It hits New York City like a bomb. It doesn't really matter in West Lafayette or places like that. So there are going to be disparities that people will see as unfair, but it's kind of unfortunate.
Right.
Can't do anything about it. Politically, it would have been very difficult to help Tom Keene make his rent because the people in West Lafayette would, for them, that would be a year's
You could just
pay.
do full stop right there.
I'm just trying to pay the vet bill for vet bill. It ain't going to happen either. Marcus Ashworth, so much of this has got to be discounted in the market, but you and I know it never is. I mean, if I'm doing the math here, I'm doing the McKee math, folks. 150 million employed in America, 10% is 15 million, so we've got 5 more weeks of this joy, according to the McKee calculator. Marcus Ashworth, is this discounted in the markets?
I'm not sure it is, actually. I think we don't know the full effect of any of this, and I think this is as I said earlier, this is exactly what's causing volatility to stay levered in a very scary place, because we just don't know how this is all going to pan out. It's now hitting front and center of the U.S., and how the U.S. markets react to it. There's been unlimited amounts of stimulus chucked in, but it's whether any of it really connects. It's that last final yard between the central bank through transmission mechanism of the banks getting money ready for corporates, but can the corporates get it? Are bank staff going to be not able to process things quick enough? That final yard between actually sort of saying you've got a lot of, come here, get this guarantee, come here, get this grant, get this loan, and actually the employers taking them and then feeding it through. And that, unfortunately, is we're watching lifetime in Europe is far from certain.
There's a lot that's far from certain, and certainly markets are trying to calibrate all this. The human story very much front and center as we try to figure out what safety net is required. And Michael, I love your sense of what's covered at this point. In other words, somebody gets laid off, they have mortgage forgiveness at this point, or they don't? Do they have student loan forgiveness under the new plan? Do they have auto loan forgiveness? And then, can they get benefits on top of that? In other words, are they not going to get evicted? Can they buy food as they sit out this period of time and hope to get rehired quickly after this is over?
Well, unfortunately, we don't know. It varies by city, and it varies by state, and it varies by bank. In New York, the governor has said you cannot be evicted or foreclosed upon for 90 days. In other states, they have not said that. Banks in general are probably going to be very lenient. The Fed and other bank regulators put out guidance suggesting that they be lenient with people and saying that it would not count against them if they were. In other words, if your non-performing loans start to go up because of this, the bank's not going to get cracked down on. Community banks actually give an exemption from their capital requirements for banks that see soured loans because of this. The student loans doesn't look like it's going to happen, not in the bill, but you are going to get unemployment benefits for 13 weeks that, coupled with the money, the check you're going to get is in theory going to match what you earned if you're in the average to lower income area. So in that sense, once that money goes out, you will be sort of made whole. It's a question, as Marcus says, of how long this is going to take to get up and running. I suspect that the money that goes to the unemployment checks will come faster than the actual checks to people, and some of the other lending programs certainly will take time to get up and running. So don't wait for your employer. Go out and file if you haven't already.
Yeah, there's a sort of incredible dissonance between the human story and then the market side, Marcus. One thing we've seen as people talk about loan forgiveness is the absolute annihilation of mortgage-related debt, particularly commercial mortgage, as a lot of people prepare for missed payments and possibly even the forbearance of that's directed by the states or by federal governments around the world. And I'm just wondering what kind of stress you're seeing there, how long that's going to be persistent, how much of this pain is going to be felt by markets versus governmentally sort of absorbed.
Well, I think I'm just looking at the European high yield market. I haven't looked at the US one overnight. There's over $1 trillion of US debt, which is technically distressed, are trading over 1,000 basis points in spread. This is really killed sub-investment grade corporates, and that's the story which is not yet been fully picked up. I wrote it there about commercial mortgage-backed securities, and obviously what Tom Barrack warned on this. But this is feeling, the government support, or the Fed support, has principally been into investment grade stuff at the moment, be it treasuries, be it munis, be it agency mortgage backs, be it now corporate bonds out to 5 years. But it's not going down below the investment grade level into junk. And that's where the real pain is being felt, and spreads have blown out almost beyond belief. I think it's the widest ever. Right. So between the double B and triple B, and it's much worse below double B. So.
Marcus, thank you so much. Marcus Ashworth with us this morning from London here on the markets, and Michael McKee, as always, our chief international economist. Thrilled that he could be with us today as well. Lisa, this has been absolutely extraordinary. I know the survey number was wrong, but I'm sorry, Lisa. You look at 156 million employed across America. Just what restaurants and bars are. I mean, I'm sorry, is 10%? 15 million? Is that number wrong?
Unprecedented, and people are looking around at a lot of pain.
We will see. Lisa Bramlett and Tom Keene, we continue. Good conversation. And, of course, those data checks. We'll do another hour here. Please stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right. They were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay. Dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have. I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. I started as a care worker, but with all the training on the job, I'm now a manager here. I'm looking after people like Mimi.
Greg really believes in me and has supported me to make better choices in my life.
6 years ago, I worked in security, keeping people out of places. Now I open doors for people instead. It's a great feeling.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
I love dogs and cats, short-haired, long-haired. I love you all, don't I, Bianca? But I don't love cat hair all over my carpet, which is why I got a job testing vacuum cleaners in the Witch Test Lab. We rub an exact amount of real pet hair into an exact area of real carpet to see which vacuum cleaners really suck it up. And the vacuums that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. We welcome all of you across this nation. Sirius XM Channel 119 in Boston, New York, and Washington, and San Francisco, and worldwide. Good morning. Particular good morning to those of you working at home, listening to us on our digital products, including Bloomberg.com. We say an historic day, without question the most interesting and historic day of American labor economic data. The number has been 210,000 claims. It ballooned last week up to a record 700,000 and did a fourple today up to 3.3 million. An extraordinary statistic of jobless claims in America. One of our themes here in the hour. Arthur Levitt scheduled to join us. Really looking forward to speaking to Chairman Levitt with his perspective, his decades of knowledge on the American economy and the shocks that we've seen as well. But first, Paul Sweeney, let's do this right away, Paul. Let's get right to David Wilson and the equity market. Look, David,
Hey, Tom. Hey, Paul. Let's start by looking at automakers. You've got Ford down 3% in early trading. The company lost its investment-grade bond rating from S&P Global 6 months after being cut to junk by Moody's Investor Service. Now, S&P's downgrade means funds that can't own high-yield debt will have to sell Ford's bonds. And you've also got General Motors down 2.5%. The automaker was placed under review at Moody's and may also lose investment-grade status. Then you turn to Boeing, up almost 6%. People familiar with the plane maker's thinking said the company and its suppliers will be eligible for as much as $60 billion in U.S. assistance in the economic rescue plan passed by the Senate. Now, the House is due to vote on the bill tomorrow. There's also $50 billion in loans and loan guarantees for the airlines, and those stocks are moving higher in early trading after some initial hesitation. You've got American up 1.5%, Delta's up 3.5%, Southwest up 3%, and United up 3.5% in early trading. The cruise lines, though, aren't so fortunate. Carnival's down 2%. Royal Caribbean's down 3.5%. Norwegian's down 5%. Now, bear in mind, these stocks had surged the past 5 days. Carnival was up 67%. Royal Caribbean was up about 90%. And Norwegian more than doubled. So just a little bit of pullback as those shares rally. Expedia Group's down 3%. The online travel company was cut to sell from neutral Goldman Sachs. Data compiled by Bloomberg shows the sell recommendation was the first on Expedia in 3 years. Yes, with everything the travel industry's been through, finally, an analyst comes through with a sell rating. Intel up 1.5%. The chipmaker was raised the equivalent of hold from sell at Sanford Bernstein. Now, again, data compiled by Bloomberg shows the call broke a tie for the most sell ratings among S&P 500 stocks. Intel had 9 of them before today. So did consulting firm Cognizant Technology, which still has 9. Micron Technology up 5%. The memory chip maker's earnings for the fiscal second quarter beat analysts' highest estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Revenue also topped projections, and Micron's third quarter forecast came out ahead, and that outlook lifted memory maker Western Digital. That stock's up 1.5%. Analog devices, on the other hand, down 2%. The chip maker withdrew forecasts for the fiscal second quarter, ending May 2nd. Analog devices cited supply disruption and doubts about the outlook for demand. And I have to talk about Tapestry. Yes, this is the company that makes Coach handbags, Kate Spade handbags, Stuart Weitzman shoes. It's down 8% in early trading. Tapestry extended store closures in North America and Europe for 2 weeks until April 10th. Tapestry also suspended dividends and stock buybacks and said it would borrow $700 million out of a $900 million credit facility.
Carol King helping David Wilson there this morning. Thank you so much, David.
Tom,
Greatly.
I'm glad I'm so far away.
So do many other people nationwide. Well, again, we welcome all of you. And I'll tell you, Paul, I was rude not to bring you in at the top of the hour, but it is a stunning statistic.
It really is, Tom. 3.28 million Americans jobless claims.
I never thought we'd see this.
I never thought we'd see that. You kind of... it's just historic, and unfortunately, I believe it's probably going to get worse. And we're going to, have, so we're going to have to deal with this
4 or 5 weeks, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
Why don't you bring in Chairman Levitt?
Absolutely, Arthur Levitt, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission and a Bloomberg LP board member. Arthur, thanks so much for joining us. Historic times, historic labor numbers out today, as Tom has been talking about. Historic legislation coming out of Congress in terms of fiscal stimulus. What did you make of the Senate fiscal stimulus bill that came out yesterday?
I think it was an important bill, and I think we're fortunate in having that bill come through. There are so many different parts of the economy that we have to pay attention to. The mortgage firms, for instance, are on the hook to continue paying principal and interest on the mortgages they service, even if homeowners are in arrears. So they are really vulnerable, and they're lobbying Congress to establish a special lending facility to help finance the billions of dollars of payments. This is just one of hundreds of elements in the economy that are ordinarily overlooked, but now become a trigger for other financial events.
Arthur, I remember in the 60s, the cocktail/dinner parties parents would have about we were going to become like Europe and the socialism of medicine. And, of course, then Lyndon Baines Johnson went out and let Harry Truman and his wife be the first recipients of Medicare. With this shock to this system, with this legislation, are we shifting to another path in the coming months, in the coming years, to a more nationalized benefit system? Is that the outcome of all this?
I think, Tom, that is a very logical assumption. I think that there will be a broad clamor for some sort of health system that goes beyond Obamacare, beyond anything that the Republicans ever considered something that they would be supportive of. Yes, I think we're going to have vast changes in our medical systems and our payment systems coming within the next year.
So, Arthur, you've had decades of experience in financial markets, regulating financial markets, overseeing financial markets. What is your assessment of how financial markets have performed during this, just incredibly volatile environment we've seen ourselves in globally for the last 4 or 5 weeks?
I think the financial markets have performed better than any other element in our society. I think they've been truly reflective of conditions in the nation, and they've also provided a source of liquidity that is essential to any viable economy. I think they've done exactly what they're supposed to have been doing, and I think they're one of the best elements in an otherwise very cloudy overall national picture.
Arthur, it's a trying time, and of course so much of that is the medical system and just trying to move forward here week by week. What does finance do? What should big banks be doing to project a message to not only their customers but to the rest of the nation? How does Wall Street project out and reach out to Main Street?
I think Wall Street has got to try to use its resources to address the problems of the pandemic. In other words, lending has got to be directed toward those elements of the economy which are addressing the virus that is plaguing the country. I think the lending practices have got to be mindful of the conditions in the country.
Yeah.
And new standards for evaluating loans have to develop. And loans have to be made that would not have been made in any other environment except this.
Well,
this is really a time for the banks to step up their game.
Arthur Levitt, stay healthy. I assume you're a social distance from Winthrop, and we'll leave it at that. You be careful out there. Arthur Levitt is the former chairman, Securities and Exchange Commission, and, of course, Bloomberg LP board member. Right now with the news in New York City, here is Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. The Senate has passed an unparalleled $2.2 trillion economic rescue package, steering aid to businesses, workers, and healthcare systems slammed by the coronavirus pandemic. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
From arguably the most partisan, divisive thing you could possibly do to coming together entirely, 100 of us, to meet this challenge, I think says a lot about the United States Senate as an institution, our willingness to put aside our differences, to do something really significant for the country.
The vote was 96-0. 4 senators did not vote because they were in self-quarantine from the coronavirus. Federal officials say, or Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says that the central bank will maintain its muscular efforts to support the flow of credit in the U.S. economy as Americans hunker down from the coronavirus pandemic. Powell on NBC's Today Show.
We're not going to run out of ammunition. That doesn't happen. We set the interest rates in time at what we think is the right, giving the economy the right level of support. If we'd raised interest rates more, it would have been higher than we thought, and economic growth would have been a little bit slower, so it wouldn't have mattered in the end. So we really are always setting our interest rates at the level we think is appropriate.
Powell also acknowledged that the economy may well be in a recession, but said that this is a unique downturn and that it was caused by efforts to control the disease. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom?
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney, I just saw Joe Weisenthal out with that Bloomberg chart on Twitter of the shock of 3.3 million claims. I put out a chart earlier of the survey, a much lower number, population adjusted. And even when you adjust for the growth of the nation, it's a shocking chart.
It really is, Tom.
Absolutely stunning.
It is. It's just extraordinary, and how quickly it happened, Tom. It just, we went, just exploded just really in the last couple of weeks, and that's what we're seeing here. And I think that's what the Senate fiscal stimulus plan is. One of the areas it's aiming for is to help those people that have been, just got laid off.
From where I am, and I know everybody's got a politics on this, I'm trying to stay out of the political debate, but Paul, to me, the immediate issue, certainly in this beleaguered New York City, but I would say nationwide, and of course New Orleans here with terrible numbers this morning on the virus, is rent relief. I mean, just the heart of the matter is people have to have a roof over their heads.
Absolutely, and just paying the bills. What's coming through this month, and that's clearly what I think Congress is trying to address a little bit.
We will continue here looking at equities, bonds, currencies, commodities. Continued good conversation, including on this medical crisis. We are thrilled you're with us coast to coast on our digital product, Bloomberg.com. Bloomberg 1130 in this New York City. This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it. I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. It's emotional sometimes, highs and lows, but no 2 days are the same. I love the work, yeah. It makes me feel really good as a person. We make people smile every day.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are racing losses as investors digest data showing an unprecedented increase in jobless claims that underscores the virus's toll on the economy. Contracts on the S&P 500 have now turned higher. They were little changed following that report that showed a record 3.3 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, well, now they're up 2. Dow futures up 85. NASDAQ futures up 17. The DAX in Germany is down 2%. 10-year Treasury up 21/30 seconds, yield 0.80%, and the yield in the 2-year 0.31%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.4% or 83 cents at $23.65 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 2.4% or $39 at $16.7340 an ounce. The euro 1.0982 against the dollar, and the yen is at 109.46. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thank you so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate that. We welcome all of you this morning, particularly those of you in New England and in northern New England, and that can always mean over to the coast in Maine. Joining us from Maine right now, Karen Mills. Her service to the nation, to President Obama, as the 23rd administrator of the Small Business Administration, and we're thrilled she could join us in the shadow of Bowdoin College this morning. Karen, thank you so much for being with us. It is truly an unprecedented moment because of those 3.3 million claims and the many more to come. So many are linked in and tied to small business. What do we need to do for small business? What is the urgency given the shock of this statistic?
Well, I would estimate that more than half of those 3.3 million jobs that we saw lost in the last week or two are from small businesses. And the reason is that small businesses have very low cash buffers. And if they have 26 days of cash on hand and you have to shut the doors, then they don't have any choice. There's nothing coming in, and in 3 weeks they'll be dead. So they need to let their employees go. And you know, half of the people who work in this country own or work for a small business. So on a normal day, that's half the jobs. But I bet it's more than half of the 3.3.
So, Karen, given what we know from some press reports coming out about the Senate fiscal stimulus plan, what's in that plan for small business?
Well, the good news is that there is a lot in that plan for small business. In the fiscal crisis in 2009, we actually lost 1.8 million small business jobs in the first quarter of 2009. And I had to jump up and down in the White House to make sure they were paying attention to small businesses. But not so today. Everybody has figured out that this is a crisis. There's $349 billion with a B for loans to small businesses, which will be forgiven if they are used to pay payroll and rent and interest on loans. So I think the bill has it right, which is get money into the hands of small businesses to keep them solvent. The the 8 weeks is the period where you can get loan forgiveness. So they're planning on at least 8 weeks in this bill.
Hey, Karen, the Small Business Administration is sort of like that final scene in the movie of Raiders of the Lost Ark where they go into, the cavernous building and try to figure out where the Ark is and all that. There's an implied bureaucracy here. Give us the true story of the bureaucracy of the Small Business Administration in Washington.
Well, this is government, so it does not turn on a dime. It's more like an ocean liner. But it does know how to get money out to small businesses. And the trick here is that it actually uses 3,000 of America's banks. So there's two questions. Can the banks get going quickly? And can the SBA and Treasury make it easy enough to push that money out? Usually there's a whole bunch of gating issues. And this bill takes a lot of them away. I think somebody was smart in that room when they were writing it because they're removing impediments. I heard Steve Mnuchin say this should be a streamlined process in a week, but frankly, I'm worried. And I'm worried about the banks. They need to do some things on their end to get the money out. And I'm worried that they won't be motivated to do it quickly enough for the small businesses.
So, Karen, it's interesting. So give us your thoughts here. You had experience with the 2008, 2009 recession. How bad do you think it's going to be for small businesses here over the next several months and throughout the year?
Well, it's going to be terrible because their business just went away. And as we said, like individuals, they have very little reserve. So if we can keep them solvent for the period of time that they're closed, then we have a chance of bringing them back, or most of them back. And one of the good pieces of this legislation is it actually covers sole proprietorships. There's 24 million of the 30 million small businesses are just one person who runs a business, and that's their livelihood. So they are eligible to pay themselves through these loans and have it all forgiven. I think if we can keep people going, then their business can come back when demand comes back. Nothing the Fed can do to stimulate the economy is going to work until these businesses can open their doors. So it depends a lot on whether it's 8 weeks or longer.
Karen, thank you so much. Karen Mills with us, of course, formerly with the Small Business Administration. Greatly appreciate her ability to be with us today. Paul, I've got the Bloomberg terminal out here. It's on my cell phone, folks. It's really, it's sort of an act of God, to be honest. I mean, it's really well run, isn't it, Paul?
It really is.
It really works.
The folks at Bloomberg know what they're doing in terms of putting all this stuff in mobile and all. It's just phenomenal.
If you're at hockey practice at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday, you can stay in touch with Wall Street off your cell phone.
Yeah, you get the full functionality. It's just extraordinary.
Or other geographies, I should say, as well. The VIX 61.52. Yes, the VIX in 2 big points now, as Paul mentioned, a lift to the market. Here 6 minutes away, make it 5 minutes away to the open. Futures up 15, Dow futures up 228. And Paul, again, looking at the bond market, as I do if I can scroll down with a handy Bloomberg finger. And yields are in a solid 2 basis points through 3.32%. On the 2-year, the 10-year yield 0.81%.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. So we're seeing some stability in the marketplace. I think that's again, I think that's what most investors are looking for is enough of the huge swings. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 percentage points in either direction. A couple of days, a number of days of just kind of stability in the marketplace, so people can get their bearings a little bit. And I think people are really looking at the credit markets. So that's kind of where the concern is right now.
And folks, at Bloomberg Financial Conditions Index is -6 standard deviations. It was grimmer 2 days ago. It's a little bit better today as well. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. An historic day for American Labor Day to 3.3 million claims filed. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
To a burning ring of fire, I went down.
years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. The National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay. Dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the S&P 500 is higher at the open, up 1.1% or 27 points at 2505. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1 1/3% or 291 points at 21,494. The Nasdaq up 1.2% or 88 points to 7474. 10-year Treasury up 21/32, yield 0.79%. The yield on the 2-year 0.31%. NYMEX crude oil down 3.4% or 82 cents at 23.67 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.9% or $31.50 at 16.6650 an ounce. The euro 1.0968 against the dollar. The yen at 109.72. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene getting you through the morning, a hugely historic morning with, in the area of economics, a shock to the American labor system. Joining us, one of the most experienced people on Wall Street at looking over the horizon, Tobias Lefkovich of Citigroup. Tobias, how do I, with an equity portfolio, look over the horizon? Out there somewhere, it's going to get better. How do I prosecute that process of getting over the horizon?
So I think you got to think about the market in an environment where there's kind of upside and downside risks. On late Monday, we put out a report after the market closed saying that we thought there was about 5% downside risk on the S&P to 2,100 or so, and that there was upside potential of about 2,700. So by year end, so you were looking at an environment of, call it 5% downside risk and close to 25% upside potential, including dividends. At a 5-to-1 kind of return to / risk ratio, that's pretty attractive. In 2 days, we had a powerful rally that almost flipped it to, about 150 points left of upside and about 450 points of downside risk. So it really flipped pretty markedly. And I do think you have to consider the range. What are your upside versus downside risks at this?
Yeah.
So, Tobias, does that suggest that we're really in a trading kind of environment here until we get a better handle on kind of the scale and scope and the timing of the virus and what it means for the economy?
So, yes, the answer to the simple question is yes, but I think it also has to be perceived as what are the things that you need to help you kind of get through and think about return. And, there are a number of issues. One is earnings estimates that are way too high and have to come down as companies are coming out and either slashing guidance or removing guidance entirely. Analysts are going to have to cut their numbers. So latest data we saw on the Bloomberg consensus numbers was about 4% earnings growth still being projected for 2020, bottom-up consensus numbers. And our numbers are now saying that earnings will be dropping like 24-25% from a top-down perspective to $125 on the S&P. There's a lot of room for those analysts to cut numbers. Valuation, I think, is probably already in an area of attraction. We can go into a little bit more detail on that. Sentiment is close to panic on our work, but it isn't quite there yet, so we don't have this kind of capitulation. And then the last thing is a little bit of confidence that the fiscal and monetary stimulus will be getting into the marketplace and helping people soon, not taking weeks and weeks, and that the healthcare confidence that our system isn't overrun and there's at least progress towards vaccines. This is a non-recurring phenomenon.
Tobias, what do revenues do, or revenue growth, or revenue decrease? What does it do given this exogenous shock?
Well, it's crushing for certain industries where you're hearing, let's say, hotels are running at 10-20% occupancy rates, airlines at 10% kind of revenue of what they used to. It's just stunning to think of the terms 90% declines. We don't get that in normal recessions. What is happening is, if you think about it in kind of a very philosophical way, our economy has been so heavily buffered, if you like, from terrible swings in the economy because of our services industries. But as you then go to, shelter in place, work from home, social distancing and things like that, that service strength that we used to have becomes our Achilles heel because it's such a large part of our economy and people can't use those services in the way they were doing it regularly, from dog walking to gyms to whatever.
So, Tobias, as we think about, you mentioned capitulation, what are some of the things that you look at, the metrics that you look at to think of, to get a sense of whether we're seeing capitulation in the market?
So I'll tell you the things we don't look at, the stuff that everybody looks at, things like the VIX. There's no edge whatsoever for investors to look at that because everyone's seeing it exactly the same time. And he said, an elevated VIX, this is terrible, and it must be a sign to buy, and it's not necessarily as good as some people would suggest. Because, again, I want to get information before you do. So there are two things that we look at. One is our panic euphoria model. There are 9 factors in the model that we've back-tested. It's proprietary, and that's what I'm saying. We're not in panic yet, and this is measuring investor positioning. So one of the 9 factors, as an example, is the premiums that people are willing to pay for puts versus calls. If you had a very, very high relative premium, you're paying a lot for that insurance. And it has been moving higher, but it was like, almost nothing back in late January and early February. But it wasn't the only thing. We look at trading volume activity. We look at cash holdings. We look at short interest. There are a bunch of different things that are built into the model that gives us probability outcomes in terms of markets going up or down.
Right.
And again, when we hit panic, it's 97% probability of markets being up in the next 12 months. Another thing we look at is top 50 names in S&P 500 by market cap, which is about half the market. How do they trade relative to one another? So, how is this big tech company trading versus a big energy company? This is a big financial company. They shouldn't be trading in tandem. They should be trading in their own idiosyncratic, fundamentals and valuations, et cetera, and growth projectiles. And yet when they do, and we're over 100% right now, they're all trading as if it's one big ETF. That's usually a positive macro signal in terms of buying the market. But I could have made that argument a week ago, and it's just not landing up with other things.
Tobias, is short interest still valid? I mean, the way you measure shorts out there with alternative investments, hedge funds, puts, calls, derivatives, all the other funny stuff you deal with every day, is the phrase short interest of use?
So, Tom, I would say only if you're using it within the context of other things. The model I mentioned, we have 9 factors in the model. I don't think you can use singular dynamic type analysis if A occurred, B follows, because A might be changing. In the case of short interest, people might be using ETFs to hedge as opposed to individual short interest in stocks. So again, if you're only using a singular item, VIX, short interest, whatever it might be, I think you're missing, so many other things. The market is made up of different interacting influences, not a singular dynamic. We like to think about it in terms of if A occurred, B follows. But it's usually if A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I are there, you can pretty much guess that the next letter is J in that pattern.
So, Tobias, if I'm brave enough to look to the other side of this, what should I be thinking about in terms of if I have some capital to put to work, in this, what is going to be, it appears to all of us, a different world. How should we think about, kind of some longer term positioning?
So look, I think there were going to be some secular changes. We're all going through this very odd experience of working from home, and we're finding out that virtual conferences and video conferences and our systems are kind of working relatively well in this forced experiment. So I think there will be some secular changes in terms of how many people will be working from home in the future, and will there be as much real estate being occupied in offices? Will we see restaurants shifting to a delivery model in certain instances as opposed to a in-house model? I mean, those are kind of things. But let's step back directly to how do we invest, which I think, number one, healthcare looks in a lot better shape today because A, they're part of the solution. B, the populists are not going to be able to beat up on them in the next 6-12 months because they're part of the solution, and because Bernie Sanders has kind of been slipping on the likely Democratic nomination issues from the perspective of Medicare for all risk. So that tends to be a sector that looks a little bit better. I think areas like the chip industry, we're so hooked on their electronics. These stocks have been hurt very badly. We'll be there on the other side, especially as capital spending is falling right now, meaning that you won't have excess, production, supply, and things like that. I would say the banks are hit a little bit too hard here. They're much better capitalized than they were during the global financial crisis. They are not sitting on some of the worst loans. It doesn't mean there aren't some banks that are going to take some hits. The energy sector is going to be a problem for some institutions, but I think some of those are interesting. The things that I'm concerned about that everybody's kind of chasing are staples, utilities, things like that we know today are the ones that are helping. But if you again go to the other side, we're not going to be hopefully hoarding food.
Yeah, I hope not. I think that hopefully, at some point we'll get to the other side. How about technology? I mean, you mentioned the chips. I mean, a lot of folks have been chasing the Netflixes of the world and things like that. How do you think about technology broadly?
So there are two ways I would respond. I'm not going to respond to an individual company, but I think the kind of known work from home, shelter in place type plays in the market are extremely well known. Markets are about trying to figure out things that aren't necessarily discovered, not that everyone knows about. So those stocks that have kind of benefited from that trend are already heavily owned as kind of a, if you like, hedge as opposed to the short interest kind of hedging to what's going on currently. It's what, again, when you get to the other side, are all of us going to be sitting at home watching, lots and lots of series, and are we, only going to work out at home and never go to a gym again? The answer is no. We will go to the gym again.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Lefkowitz, you were suggesting that before this crisis we were going to the gym. You were just assuming that.
I was, and I'm really fearful of seeing my personal trainer in a few weeks or whatever, because I think I'm so out of shape just by not doing things the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, my floor manager here at home is my personal trainer, and she has noticed that we are not going to the gym. Tobias Lefkowitz, go away. He's with Citigroup as well on the equity markets. With the news, someone always cut and chiseled, Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Worldwide infections from the coronavirus are soaring toward 500,000 people as healthcare systems struggle to keep up. American deaths have passed the 1,000 mark. Both Italy and the United States appeared set today to pass the number of infections in China, where the outbreak was first reported. The head of the World Health Organization is urging governments not to squander the opportunity to slow the spread of the virus while there is still time. The U.S. Senate passed a $2.2 trillion economic rescue package, steering aid to businesses, workers, and healthcare systems, and the House is expected to vote on it tomorrow. Americans are not used to seeing what's happening in New York City, where hospitals are being overwhelmed because of COVID-19. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro reports.
At Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, they're running out of space for new patients. Doctors still don't have enough ventilators. 13 people died there in a single day. Dr. Colleen Smith expects it to get worse.
There's no clear end to this. This could go on for a month or 2 months.
She says nurses can only treat the symptoms now, not the illness itself.
Although we are trying a variety of treatments, we really have no treatment for it other than time.
Time the city's hospitals do not have. A FEMA missive obtained by the New York Times says all of the city's 1,800 intensive care beds are expected to be full by tomorrow. Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that this morning. I'll tell you, folks, looking out across Manhattan this morning, you think about the many hospitals here. Bloomberg with a superb graphic today. Superb graphic of the beds, 23 hospital beds in Greenwich, the Langone Center of New York University, with some 300. Paul, I'm literally here in the shadow of Mount Sinai and their 1,000 beds. Those are the people that matter.
Absolutely.
This morning.
Yep, absolutely, Tom. Those are the heroes.
We will continue from New York. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Top chefs may be grappling with city lockdowns, temporary closures of their restaurants, and food supply interruptions during the coronavirus pandemic. But Asia's 50 Best Restaurant Awards went right on. The winners were announced in a video live stream in place of a ceremony originally planned for Saga Prefecture, Japan, during cherry blossom season. Singapore's Odette held on to the title of Asia's Best Restaurant for the second year running. Rounding out the top 5 are Cantonese restaurant The Chairman in Hong Kong, Tokyo Kaseki Eatery Den, Neo-Parisian Bistro Bellon in Hong Kong, and Singapore-based barbecue restaurant Burnt Ends. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, a luxury hotelier has started a COVID-19 service, offering wealthy clients high-end quarantine apartments with meal delivery and medical services, including virus tests. Quarantine apartments in Zurich, Zug, and Lucerne are available for about $200 to $822 a day. Mama Adirode, Bloomberg Radio.
Constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it. I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. It's emotional sometimes, highs and lows, but no 2 days are the same. I love the work, yeah. It makes me feel really good as a person. We make people smile every day.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. Somehow, I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and stocks are rising as investors speculate the unprecedented stimulus package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. The S&P 500 is jumping 1.6%. It's headed for its first 3-day rally since February. Treasuries holding on to gains. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up 1.7% or 41 points at 2517. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1.7% or 369 points at 21,566, and the Nasdaq up 1.7% or 122 points at 7505. 10-year Treasury up 22 seconds, yield 0.79%. The yield on the 2-year 0.30%. NYMEX crude oil is down 4.1% on $1.01 to $23.49 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.8% or $29.30 at $16.63 an ounce. The euro 1.0953 against the dollar, and the yen is at 109.80. Investment opportunities are starting to present themselves in the markets. That, according to the CEO of UBS, who says clients are starting to get back in. And we spoke with Sergio Armati today, and here's what he had to say.
We do see people taking advantage of new opportunities. For example, this is time, in our point of view, to move into credits. If you look at historically from a risk-reward standpoint of view, not many times in the history where credit has been priced so attractively. And therefore, we see people taking advantage of that.
And that's UBS CEO Sergio Armati. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Joining us now on the markets. And, of course, on the ice to the north, Luke Kawa joins us with Bloomberg. Luke, I've got to give the trophy for COVID journalism to the Toronto Star. I saw this, and I laughed so hard. Folks, we're all learning new things in this crisis. And, I don't mean to make anything light about it. This is a horrific moment for New York City. When you were a kid, you either owned Bowers or CCMs, and if your father was rich, someday you could own Bowers Supremes or CCM Tackerberries, and Bauer has done so well as an iconic company of Canada, an iconic company of hockey. So here's the describer for the company Bauer making face masks for this horrific virus, Luke. Bauer, the company that manufactures the goalie skates of Maple Leafs goaltender Frederik Andersen. Luke, I thought you wrote that for the Toronto Star.
So wrong paper, but hey, I'm just glad that something related to Frederik Andersen will be involved in saving, because over the past few months that has not been the case in the Maple Leafs net. So that's hey, I'll take it where I can get it.
Yeah, it's a hockeyless season right now, and there is this disaster, and of course the labor data, folks, that we saw at 8:30 this morning, 3.3 million, just absolutely no one could ever imagine that statistic. Luke, when you look at the Bloomberg screen, what does it tell you about stability in the market as we try to get out in 1 week to the next claims data?
The thing I definitely won't be doing anytime soon is trying to explain how this ridiculously atrocious data can at all map onto anything resembling a positive in financial markets, besides to say that, the data was still holding up very well when we were sliding very hard in markets end of February and through mid-March. And now that, we're in that catch-up period, the sequence is generally, if you have a thing, it's going to be that volatility spikes first, peaks first, then the market bottoms, and then after that, the economy bottoms. So I'd be looking for kind of something like that to stay at play, and for the market to be at a certain point ahead of the economy.
So, Luke, one of the areas that people are telling me to really focus is not so much on the equity markets, but on the credit markets. What are you seeing in the credit markets over the last couple of days, especially after the Fed kind of really jumped in Monday morning with some support?
It's been a beautiful, dominoes falling, but in the very positive way. So earlier, when the Fed was, obviously rescuing, quote unquote, parts of the market, you would see only those parts do well, and the others be kind of the orphans or the refugee of anything in credit. So you had, the Treasury market kind of stability return first. Then when the Fed makes a move into supporting IG via special purpose vehicle, you had IG do very well, and the rest of the high yield universe not. However, what those moves have done is that they've rippled throughout the credit space. For instance, yesterday, MORT, that's a big mortgage REIT ETF, it was up about 25%. High yield has had a great couple of days. Emerging market debt. So you're really seeing that kind of improvement in credit and liquidity conditions generally ripple throughout the stack, even to the parts of the market that aren't directly Fed supported.
Look, what happens to a company, excuse me, folks, what happens to a company, Luke, when they go from investment grade to junkola? I mean, we see this with Ford Motor today. I mean, it's an iconic company. How does the behavior towards Ford change when they get the shock of that credit markdown?
So there's a couple things that are important here to think about, and now is that the stakes are even higher from moving to investment grade to high yield, because there's one big buyer that's in one market and not the other. So Bank of America was recently looking at this as it applies to the ECB's investment grade bond buying, and they showed that at that time companies focused with the utmost energy to try and get upgraded into IG so that they could be the beneficiary of the ECB program. It's going to be a little harder to do this now in reverse because just the general economy is deteriorating. But what happens is that you translate to a different buyer base, and in this case, now a smaller buyer base when you're going from IG to high yield. And another thing that often kicks into play, and I've seen this cited on both sides of the coin, so I'll give you the bad news first, is that oftentimes investment grade companies, the duration, their maturities are a heck of a lot longer than the average high yield maturity. So it's often not a good fit when you slide into that buyer base. However, given that duration has been so important to credit returns generally over the past few years, I've seen some strategists make the argument that, hey, some of those longer-term bonds might really be welcomed once among a certain class of high-yield investors you do slide in. But there's no way to spin this as a good news story.
Lukawa, thank you so much. He is with Bloomberg, and of course, giving us perspective across assets as well as modest perspective on the hockey team from Toronto. They wear blue. Paul, I miss it. This thing's missing. Like I said this earlier, Paul, I know we don't have a lot of time to do this, but, I miss, like, going to lunch.
Sure.
Just like going to lunch. And it must be something as to be a large basketball fan as you are, like March Not Madness.
Yeah. It's just
different.
Everyone's lives have been completely upended here, and everybody's trying to adapt as best we can, and that's I guess that's all we can do at this point.
We say good morning to all of you across the nation on Sirius XM channel 119 in San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 in Washington, Boston, and New York. Particular good morning to those of you in Louisiana as you wake up to a challenging day. We are produced by Richard Truman. I'm not sure where Richard Truman is, but he's out there somewhere. This is Bloomberg.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Attention, all units on tactical.
Boys, just pick a track. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry.
Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car, so don't drive him to distraction. Let him mate concentrate.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Hot, tasty, and ready in seconds. That's how most people like their coffee. I know because I used to have a coffee van outside London Bridge Station. Now I test coffee machines in the Which Test Lab. We find the machines that make the right amount of hot, tasty coffee time and time again. And the ones that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Ah, perfect. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hi, I'm Roger, the CEO of Asda. Asda is working hard to try to ensure you have all you need and that you can shop safely. Please keep 2 meters distance, only touch what you intend to buy, and if possible, use cashless payments. If necessary, we'll limit the number of people in a shop to help you keep your distance. I'm hugely grateful to all our colleagues. Please be kind to them.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still... We're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Thursday morning from New York City and parts beyond to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we are going to look at that jobless claim number, 3.28 million, historic. We'll break it down with Carl Riccadonna of Bloomberg Economics. Plus, we're going to take a look at how Congress, with this fiscal stimulus bill, looks to get money to small businesses fast. But first, let's go to Charlie Pellet for Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie, what do you have for us?
Well, I got a lot for you. The history in the making here with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all surging, but that shocker record 3.28 million number this morning. Yes, you'll have more on that coming up in just a moment. Right now, those stocks higher across the board as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. This update brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth number one in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Here's where we stand. S&P up 71 points. That is a gain of 2.8%. The Dow surging 571 points, up 2.7%. NASDAQ up right now by 179 points. That is a gain of 2.4%. We've got the 10-year up 17.30 seconds. The yield now 0.81%. Gold advancing 1%, 16.33 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude tumbling 4.8%, 23.34 right now for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Energy Department, by the way, has withdrawn an offer to buy oil for the nation's strategic petroleum reserve due to uncertainty over funding from Congress. Well, jobless claims surging to a record as businesses shut down. While the reading exceeded estimates, aid is on the way from the U.S. government to help offset the impact on workers and businesses. But Alan Zentner, chief U.S. economist at Morgan Stanley, says stimulus won't provide immediate relief for consumers.
So the savings rate is going to jump higher on this, and that savings rate will be there. That savings will be there for when we are allowed to start pulling back on some of the social distancing, then go back to whatever a new normal looks like. We'll have that funds available. That's the first time that it could really look like actual stimulus. And that's why we actually do have ourselves climbing out of this hole gradually.
And we've got more on the economy coming up for you in just a moment right here on Bloomberg Radio. Treasuries holding gains. The dollar fell for a third day. Right now we've got the 10-year, the yield there, 0.81%. Gold up 0.9%, 16.31 the ounce. As I mentioned, crude now down by almost 5%. WTI 23.31 a barrel. Again, let's recap the equity numbers here. S&P up 65, up by 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We are seeing gains, as Charlie was saying, in equity markets, which is interesting when you contrast it with the unbelievable number, a record number of unemployment, initial jobless claims filed, 3.3 million. Yeah. It raises a question here. We knew it was bad. We don't know how bad. This indicates it's very, very bad. And yet, is the indication in markets right now that the U.S. Congress can save it, or that the Fed and the Congress together can somehow cushion the blow, and that we've priced in most of the pain? Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us now. Carl Riccadonna, chief U.S. economist with Bloomberg Economics. Dave, I want to start with you. Is that the implication from the 2.7% rally we're seeing right now on the S&P?
Boy, it sure looks that way, Lisa, especially when you consider what's leading the advance in the S&P 500. We're talking Synchrony Financial, Capital One, and Discover Financial. All these companies are in the credit card business. And you talk about an area of the market where you think people would be concerned, given the jump in jobless claims that we just saw, raising the issue of whether people are going to be able to keep up their payments on their credit cards. And yet these stocks are all up like 12% or more. Synchrony up 13.5%. Now, Capital One actually got an upgrade over at Oppenheimer. The firm moved to the equivalent of buy from hold on the stock. They basically say that company will, hold up okay. I mean, given everything that's coming in terms of credit. So, that's something that really jumps out at you. And to see his peers go up as much as they have, I mean, it really gets your attention.
Yeah, and really, this is exactly where I wanted to go, Carl. How much is the high number a good thing? And good is in quotes, not a good thing. It's terrible and a tragedy for all those people losing their jobs, but a sign that at least millions of people will be receiving unemployment benefits, potentially cushioning the lack of revenue that they're getting elsewhere. Carl.
Really, the turn in the markets is really a signal of a couple of things. And so, first of all, Jay Powell this morning on the Today Show said that the Fed is nowhere near running out of ammunition to confront the crisis. Yesterday, there was a Bloomberg News scoop that the ECB is getting ready to act more aggressively as well. And then also today we see very convincing signs that we're close to Congress finally passing the fiscal stimulus, which $2 trillion has some multiplicative effects throughout the economy. So the administration is claiming $2 trillion is more like $4 to $6 trillion. Nonetheless, this is all providing important economic support. And to your point, Lisa, a lot of individuals who may have been out of work at least are getting some transfer payments from the government. And in fact, with the fiscal stimulus bill, they can tack an additional $600 per week onto that transfer payment. That certainly doesn't bridge the gap, but it helps to at least offset some of the sting from this hard stop in the economy.
So, Carl, just wanted to get your latest thought coming out of Bloomberg Economics. How do you think GDP is going to look for the U.S. this year? We've seen a lot of forecasts coming out of Wall Street. Just wondering where Bloomberg Economics is.
Sure. So looking at the second quarter, we're looking for a 9% contraction. In the downside scenario, we think that could be closer to 14%. But this entirely depends on the extent of the lockdown. If we're looking at a lockdown of 45 to 60 days, then those forecasts will be roughly on the mark. If we reopen too soon and have to lock back down, or if the lockdown lasts through the entirety of the second quarter, then we're looking for a sharper contraction in the economy. But I think it's too early to be making that call.
Dave, on the market side, there's a question of the actual economic effect of the shutdowns, and then there's the effect of whatever is going to probably be passed today by Congress. Do we have a sense of how much the market gain today is hinging on that bill getting passed today?
Boeing and the airline stocks. You talk about two areas that stand to benefit. We've reported people familiar with the matter telling us that Boeing, it may end up with as much as $60 billion in assistance when you count in their suppliers as well, coming out of the deal. Boeing shares up 12% at the moment. And you look across the board, you see the airlines higher, and they're due for $50 billion in loans and loan guarantees. Delta leading the way there with a gain of almost 7%. And actually, the airlines are doing substantially better than the cruise lines at this point, which aren't in the same position to get assistance under the measure. I mean, Carnival's up, but you got Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Line down. So, it goes to show you that there is a real focus on the winners, and I wouldn't say the losers. I mean, they certainly, if you think about the cruise lines, they've lost plenty already. But the companies that are going to get the most benefit out of this bill are doing relatively well in today's trading.
Carl, just real quick here, I would love to get your sense of whether we're going to see another 3.3 million initial jobless claims next reading.
Well, I think we're going to see something in the million-plus territory for sure. The issue we're contending with here as we look at the numbers is that there's a significant backlog of applicants who have not been able to file. Websites are crashing and call centers are overwhelmed with the capacity constraints. So I think that we will see at least a couple more weeks with jobless claims. The initial claims north of 1 million. It could be 2 or 3 million. I don't think we'll see as high of readings going forward as we saw today. Just looking at today's number implies 5.5% on the unemployment rate, so almost a 2-point increase. If we continue to see this, then we're talking about 7-8% unemployment in the second quarter.
Cara Cadana, Chief U.S. Economist with Bloomberg Economics, and Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor. Thank you, both of you. And Paul, just to get a sense of how significant this 3.3 million number was, it was quadruple the prior record in the 1980s. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, thank you. Close to 500,000 people around the world have caught coronavirus. Hospitals are reaching their breaking point. The U.S. is close to surpassing China, where the outbreak began in its infection count. Colleen Smith is an emergency doctor at Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, which has seen a dramatic surge in COVID-19 patients.
The frustrating thing about all of this is it really just feels like it's too little too late. Like we knew it was coming.
Elmhurst reported 13 COVID-19 deaths in one day this week. One doctor described the scene to the New York Times as apocalyptic. The House is set to vote tomorrow on that record $2.2 trillion rescue package that was passed unanimously in the Senate last night. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he was inspired to act by what his home state of New York is going through.
It pains me. And it pains you in a certain sense because you can't be with the people. You have to talk to them on the telephone. That bothers me. I like to mix and mingle and press the flesh. Press the flesh is a bad word right now.
New York has almost 31,000 cases of coronavirus. More than half of those are in New York City. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell made a rare appearance on a morning TV news program to assure Americans the central bank has their back.
We're not going to run out of ammunition. That doesn't happen.
Powell tells NBC's Today Show the U.S. might enter a recession in the second quarter, but he says there could be a good rebound once the health emergency is over. After that record unemployment filings last week, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the number is not relevant. The Treasury Secretary tells CNBC President Trump is protecting those unemployed people. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
I can find and fund my car. From a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs. or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Supporting people to live life to the fullest is an amazing job to have. I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. I started as a care worker, but with all the training on the job, I'm now a manager here, looking after people like Mimi.
Greg really believes in me and has supported me to make better choices in my life.
6 years ago, I worked in security, keeping people out of places. Now I open doors for people instead. It's a great feeling.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's. Visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. Somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. S&P up now by 3.6%, up 89 points. The Dow is up 3.7%, up 783 points. NASDAQ up 225. That is a gain of 3%. And the 10-year, the yield there, 0.81%. Stocks are rallying as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. Right now, we have got the 10-year, as I mentioned, at 0.81%. Gold up 1.2%, 16.36 the ounce. A sell-off in crude oil today, down 3.9%, 23.66 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Jobless claims surged to a record 3.28 million Americans last week as businesses shut down to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Again, recapping, equities are rallying. S&P now up by 93, up 3.8%. The Dow up 800, also up 3.8%. NASDAQ up 232, up 3.1%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. As we talk about that $2.2 trillion plan that the Congress is expected to pass today, there is a question of how quickly it can get money out the door and who it gives money to. A big focus has been small and medium-sized businesses. Our next guest has a lot of experience with the balance sheets in all conditions of these companies. Adam Levitin, professor of law and of Georgetown Law in Washington, D.C. Professor, thank you so much for being with us. You recently penned an op-ed in the New York Times, How to Get Money to Small Businesses Fast. Parsing through the details, it seems like the $350 billion estimated to go to small and mid-sized businesses grants will be administered by the Small Business Administration, which has 4,000 employees. Are you concerned about the logistics getting the money out the door?
Absolutely. The money is not going to move as fast as we really need it to move. Small businesses are already laying off employees and having trouble meeting their bills. And they need the money not today. They needed it yesterday. And it's going to take weeks, if not longer, for these new small business loans. And they're forgivable loans, but the interest is not forgivable on them. It's going to take weeks, if not longer, for that money to get to small businesses. There's going to have to be a process whereby small businesses apply for the loans get processed, and then finally the checks will be dispersed. It's not going to happen instantaneously.
So, Professor, is there any mechanism that would be preferable to that? I mean, in reality, can you, in fact, get cash to small businesses any quicker?
There's one way to get cash into small businesses pretty much immediately. Actually, there are two ways to get it into small businesses immediately. One is in the bill. It's a delay in payroll taxes because some of the payroll taxes are paid by the business, basically your tax withholding. And the bill is allowing businesses to dip into the funds they withhold from your payroll and just pay it to Treasury later. That is one thing that gets them cash immediately. Another thing that could get them cash immediately is a debt moratorium or a debt collection moratorium. And what that does is it would affect, and that's not in the bill, I want to be clear, but that would effectively force float, sort of an extension of payment terms from things like landlords and lenders to small businesses. That would allow small businesses to prioritize their cash to keep maintaining payroll, and then Congress could, in theory at least, compensate lenders and landlords on the back end with something, say, a tax credit for their in the future.
So you have a lot of experience in this, both in bankruptcy, commercial law, but also as former special counsel to the Congressional Oversight Panel for TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program back in 2008 and 2009. I'm wondering what you think of the process of this bill. If you talk to representatives, they say this has moved as fast as anything can move in Washington, D.C. If you speak to the businesses, they say what you say. We needed the checks last week, and we've already laid people off. What's your sense?
Those are both true. There's no contradiction there. This bill moved remarkably fast. This is the largest federal spending bill we've ever seen, and it went, as Congress goes, at lightning speed. The problem is that Congress is not set up to deal. It's meant to be a deliberative body in some sense, and it's not set up for dealing with emergencies with speed. There's just a tension between the design of our institutions and the needs of the moment.
So, Professor, how do you think this stimulus will, in fact, impact small and mid-sized businesses over the next coming weeks and months?
Well, there are some small and medium-sized businesses for which this money is just going to be too late, and we don't have a sense of how many of them there are that fall in that category. That there's the limited data we have on small businesses, and it's all kind of problematic because small businesses don't fit one profile. You know, the dry cleaner or the restaurant looks very different than the small manufacturer, let's say. But in general, small businesses don't have enormous cash reserves. That probably best guess is that they maybe have a few weeks or a month of cash reserves on hand, and on average, and that means that there are plenty that have less. And those that have less are going to be in real trouble and may not be able to make it until government assistance arrives.
Go ahead.
The ones that can last until they get the assistance, this will keep this. What this will do, it will basically put them on life support. The government will effectively take over payroll and utilities and rent and mortgages and other debt service. For quite a while. The real question is, how long does the crisis last?
Absolutely. That's kind of been the key question. Adam Levitin, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your thoughts and perspective. Adam Levitin is a Georgetown law professor and former special counsel to the Congressional Oversight Panel of TARP, giving us his perspective on how this Senate fiscal relief bill, Lisa, will help small and mid-sized businesses. Those are the ones that we're seeing layoff workers, and those are the ones that clearly need some help as soon as possible.
There's also this real dissonance right now between giving debt relief and assistance to some of these companies and the amount of debt they have incurred, and the people on the other side of that who are also hurting, given the fact that their loans are deteriorating rapidly at an unprecedented speed and value. And you just have to wonder the market reaction to any government response, and we've seen a lot of dissonance there.
Yeah, we really have. And again, that data point that came out this morning, historic jobless claims, 3.28 million, just extraordinary, showing you the initial waves of economic discontent coming and disinterruption coming to the market. We will have more coming up. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Hope from Congress lifting shares this morning. The Dow rising more than 700 points as the Senate approved the more than $2 trillion stimulus package to respond to the economic and health crisis caused by the coronavirus. This sends a bill to the House, which will meet on Friday. Jobless claims surging a record 3.28 million. That blew past estimates, with businesses closing and laying off workers. That's more than quadruple the previous record high of 695,000 in 1982. This is the most sudden severe shock ever to hit the labor market. Movie theater giant AMC Entertainment has furloughed its employees and cut pay for top executives as it tries to save cash. The theater chain closed all of its roughly 600 locations last week. And Apple is weighing a delay to the release of its 5G iPhone. That's according to Japanese news service Nikkei. The internal discussions come as the coronavirus saps demand and disrupts supply chains. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, GOAT, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have. I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. I started as a care worker, but with all the training on the job, I'm now a manager here, looking after people like Mimi.
Greg really believes in me and has supported me to make better choices in my life.
6 years ago, I worked in security, keeping people out of places. Now I open doors for people instead. It's a great feeling.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband Switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
I love dogs and cats. Short-haired, long-haired. I love you all, don't I, Bianca?
But I don't love cat hair all over my carpet, which is why I got a job testing vacuum cleaners in the Witch Test Lab. We rub an exact amount of real pet hair into an exact area of real carpet to see which vacuum cleaners really suck it up. And the vacuums that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
Imagine winning 10 grand.
Yes!
With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years.
Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up on Bloomberg Markets, we're going to be speaking with Josh Wingrove for Bloomberg, talking about the Senate's $2 trillion stimulus. What's the likelihood of it getting passed today? Plus, we'll be speaking about the developing world, which has gotten uniquely hammered amid the shortage of dollars. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Charlie Pellet for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie.
Well, good morning, Lisa Bromwitz. Two major themes for investors today. We're covering both. First of all, that $2 trillion rescue package. More on that coming up in a moment. Jobless claims. What a number there. Claims surging to a record 3.28 million Americans last week filing claims, of course, as business shutting down to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Here's where equity markets stand right now. We've got the S&P up 92 points. That is a gain of 3.7%. Dow Jones Industrial Average up again, close to the high of the day, up 858 points right now. That is an advance of 4.1%. And NASDAQ up 239 points for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That's a gain there of 3.3%. 10 years up 17.30 seconds, yield 0.81%. Gold up 1.1% right now, 16.34 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude retreating today, down 3.6%, 23.60 a barrel. Energy Department withdrawing an offer to buy oil for the nation's strategic petroleum reserve because of uncertainty over funding from Congress. Investment opportunities are starting to present themselves in the markets. That's according to the CEO of UBS, who says clients are starting to get back in. We spoke with Sergio Armardi today, and here's what he had to say.
We do see people taking advantage of new opportunities. For example, this is time, in our point of view, to move into credits. If you look at historically from a risk-reward standpoint of view, not many times in the history where credit has been priced so attractively, and therefore we see people taking advantage of that.
And today, investors speculating that $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. More coming up in just a moment. Again, repeating the jobless claims number today, claims surging to a record 3.28 million. Recapping, S&P up now by 102 points. That's a gain of 4.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Well, Senate has passed the fiscal stimulus plan, $2 trillion. It's now in the House waiting to get approved there, then presumably on to the desk of President Trump, providing some much-needed assistance to the U.S. economy and consumers. To get a sense of what's in that bill, what's not in that bill, what still needs to be done, we welcome Josh Wingrove. Josh is a White House correspondent for Bloomberg News. So, Josh, give us your quick takeaways of what we know so far about this fiscal stimulus plan.
Well, the big thing is it's aimed to put money in the pockets of people, folks that have lost their jobs, that kind of thing. But how quickly that will happen remains unclear. For instance, there are reports indicating that if you don't already have sort of direct deposit set up with the IRS, that this thing could take some time. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin thinks that otherwise, maybe as soon as a few weeks. And as soon as a week, if you're a small business that's looking for essentially bridge loans or bridge funding to keep people on payroll, pay your rent, that kind of thing. So the timing is varied, but of course people are wanting to put their foot on the gas and get this stuff out the door. My head is still reeling at the scale a little bit of this. I mean, it just goes to show the level of the crisis. Congress normally haggles over every little thing forever, it seems. And this is a $2.2 trillion package that was more or less shot out the door. The House is scheduled to vote on it tomorrow, but, we'll see. Mnuchin expressed hope that perhaps that could even come as soon as today.
An early analysis by Michael Feroli and his team at J.P. Morgan said that it was about $1.8 trillion of economic support, of which only about $1.3 trillion is true spending, and $500 billion is for direct lending, loan guarantees, support for Fed lending. Do you have any early reads on just how long this will sort of keep things going, act as a support for the U.S. economy?
It's a great question, and Mnuchin says it's about 3 months. Trump keeps flagging the notion of another bill. I mean, it's hard to see when that would come together. They sort of rolled all the big ticket stuff into this bill, but if you take Mnuchin's timeline, that puts us into sort of June, July range, and I think they hope certainly be coming out of the fog by then. Of course, President Trump wants to start opening things up a lot sooner, but it won't be very long to be, today or tomorrow that the U.S. overtakes the world lead in caseload. Of course, New York City remains particularly worrisome hotspot. This is not getting better, although despite the president's view that in some parts it is getting better. They might have to come back to the table, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And in particular, you think about small business, right? You can maybe, let's say everything goes well, everything goes smoothly, which in government it rarely does, and you get that loan or you get that funding and you can make payroll. What happens if you're still closed in June, July, August? What happens if you open and your employees start getting sick because there's still an outbreak? I mean, the uncertainty remains.
Josh, as it relates to this bill, is there anything material that was not in this bill that caught people by surprise?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh God, you stumped me with that one. I think obviously that the people were focused. The big focus was on airlines, and we've seen that itemized. The stocks have responded. Investors have responded to what they see in terms of funding and loans for airlines. I think we thought we'd see sort of more specific things for that sort of second tier of sectors. Hotels, for instance, itemized specifically. They didn't do that. I suppose hotels are going to be able to access the general sort of corporate trough, as it were. And of course, the notion of bailing out hotels raised that other question, which is, do all hotels get bailed out, including ones that have the Trump name on the front of them? So I think that will be one to watch going forward. Airlines are covered, Boeing is covered. What are those other big corporate sectors that are either specifically helped with this or are sort of flocking to it more than other sectors? And I think that we'll have our work cut out for us in tracking that going forward.
Josh, are you a bit exhausted? I will say this whole thing of working from home and trying to navigate all the new systems, it's exhausting. And then you add in all of the back and forth with Congress. My hat's off to you, Josh. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I as tired as I am, I just think everyone is exhausted. I mean, this is a crazy time for everyone, and the anxiety of it. I mean, at least markets are rebounding a little bit. You take
At
away
least
that
markets are totally calm, right? No, I'm just kidding. Josh Wingrove, White House correspondent.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us. Josh Wingrove covers the White House for us. And let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C., where Nathan Hager also is covering all the happenings around the world and also is exhausted. Nathan.
Well, there is a lot happening, including this that just crossed the Bloomberg terminal moments ago, Lisa. The U.S. is filing federal charges now against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Multiple media outlets, including the New York Times, say federal prosecutors are accusing the embattled leader of Venezuela of taking part in a narco-terrorism conspiracy to import cocaine into the United States. Nearly a dozen other members of Maduro's inner circle are also expected to be indicted, along with members of Colombia's largest rebel group known as the FARC. These charges will be announced later this morning in a live-streamed Justice Department news briefing. As the number of coronavirus cases continues to grow around the world, the House is under pressure to pass that $2.2 trillion stimulus package the Senate passed unanimously last night. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer says they'll try to pass it by voice vote tomorrow. That process would not require all members of the House to return to Washington. Now, besides the billions in loans and grants for businesses large and small that are part of this package, the bill also has implications for parts of President Trump's agenda. Amy Morris has more on that from our Bloomberg 99.1 Washington newsroom.
The Pentagon is in line to get $10.5 billion in stimulus funds to weather the coronavirus pandemic, but it would be barred from using any of that money to build a border wall. The money cannot be moved into the Drug Interdiction and Counter-Drug Activities account, which the Pentagon uses for border enforcement, including wall construction. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has already said it will not pass under unanimous consent in the House. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
And we will discuss the rescue plan with House Speaker Pelosi at 11:30 a.m. Wall Street time right here on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it. I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. It's emotional sometimes, highs and lows, but no 2 days are the same. I love the work, yeah. It makes me feel really good as a person. We make people smile every day.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. Somehow, I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Imagine winning 10 grand.
Yes!
With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years.
Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hi, I'm Roger, the CEO of Asda. Asda is working hard to try to ensure you have all you need and that you can shop safely. Please keep 2 meters distance, only touch what you intend to buy, and if possible, use cashless payments. If necessary, we'll limit the number of people in a shop to help you keep your distance. I'm hugely grateful to all our colleagues. Please be kind to them.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks trading at or near highs of the morning. Stocks are advancing as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. S&P 500 index extending its advance this morning, up now by 84 points at 2560. That is a gain of 3.4%. NASDAQ is up 220 points, up 3%. Dow Industrials up 788 points, higher by 3.7%. 10-year up 21/30 seconds, yield 0.79%. Now gold up 0.8%, 16.29 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.8%, 23.83 a barrel. Manufacturing giant Caterpillar has withdrawn its outlook for 2020, adding to evidence that the coronavirus crisis is disrupting U.S. industrial activity. Caterpillar shares, they're up now by 0.4%. Recapping, stocks higher. S&P up 80. That is a gain of 3.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. The Federal Reserve has thrown the kitchen sink at markets in large part in response to the apparent dollar dollar shortage increasing strains in the dollar funding market. And this has hit emerging markets particularly hard. Damian Sassower has been tracking it as chief market strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence. And he joins us now. Damian, I'm wondering, we are seeing the dollar weaken a bit in the past few sessions, but still the move is to be stronger. And I'm wondering, how bad has it been in the emerging markets complex?
Yeah, I've been fielding a lot of questions asking what happens if this dollar just keeps rising and EM can't pay their debts in dollar. And with the broad trade-weighted USD now at a 50-year high, you're really left with two options. If you're an EM sovereign that's got, dollar obligations, what does the U.S. do? Does it do nothing and let them default, or does it offer debt forgiveness? In both scenarios, Lisa, they're very inflationary, right? So especially as the U.S. fiscal situation worsens, $2 trillion stimulus is just the tip of the iceberg, it seems. And the government reluctant to offer bailouts to Boeing and big companies, I imagine they're not going to be very open to a new Brady plan either. So EM's going to have a tough time here.
So, Damian, give us a sense of kind of where the greatest risk is that you see out there in EM world.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pick and choose, but, there are things that investors can do, if they are indeed willing to take that plunge and invest in emerging market, local assets. One is to diversify your funding sources, right? Most people, dollar investors, think, okay, I'm taking the dollars in my pocket, I'm converting them into EM currencies and investing. But what you can do is you can also spread the dollar exposure, your short dollar exposure now, around other developed market companies like the Swiss franc, like the Japanese yen, the British pound, the euro, et cetera. And if you do that, you actually have a much more attractive risk-adjusted return profile, historically speaking, obviously. And you can definitely protect if the dollar does indeed continue to decline here. So, there is some benefit there. There are ways that you can kind of manage around this. But, yeah, it's going to be very volatile, very whippy. And the structure of emerging markets really doesn't offer itself to taking short-term risk, if you follow me. Some of these markets are very illiquid.
Yeah, and talking about that, there's also a question of just how much debt has been incurred by some of these developing markets and companies there. And the idea that this imbalance in dollars isn't just simply a technical problem, but just an overall imbalance where too many dollars were borrowed by a lot of these countries. And I'm wondering, yes, we're seeing some of the stress eased up, but how much pressure is there still that's going to cause a rash of defaults that people are expecting that may not be fully priced in even yet?
Well, I think you have to look at those that are most exposed, right, Lisa? So for me, just looking at, emerging market sovereigns that have borrowed in dollars, it's the frontier sovereigns, the oil exporting frontier sovereigns like Nigeria, Angola, Gabon. You've seen Ecuador now file for default. Those are the ones that are obviously front and center. But, it's all of those other sovereigns that have, that are relying on tourist revenues, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica. These are big issuers in EM. And so, there's a lot of debt out there in dollars. They're going to have a lot of difficulty paying them back, but the question becomes a political one. Who do we bail out and who don't we? And that can potentially ignite a virtuous cycle of sovereign restructurings that really would break the buck and cause a hyperinflationary scare in my mind. So there's really no easy way to go about it, but I don't think you can ignore it. What the U.S. has done here post 2008, it's ignored a lot of the things that could potentially go wrong. Post Volcker, post Dodd-Frank. Now we're just paying for it here. To ignore this would be short-sighted in my view.
All right, so give us a sense of timing, Damian. Where are we going to see the biggest problems first, do you think?
Right, so it's definitely going to hit the oil exporters first and foremost. They definitely have some capacity to manage through it in the near term, even more so if the dollar continues to come off here. But if the dollar does another, about face and really rips to the upside, for whatever reason, Paul, you're really going to see a lot of them start, going to the IMF, going to the World Bank. You've already seen those two big multilaterals turn to the U.S. and say, hey, we need help here to sort of stem the tide. But, it's no real easy question to say. Look, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about, I'd be on a beach somewhere if I knew the timing around this, right? So I think that's really what it comes down to. You just have to watch all these little pockets in the market and hope for the best.
Damon, you've been covering this market for decades. You've got a lot of contacts. And one reason why I always love speaking with you is you can kind of get a feel for the mood. And honestly, the people who I speak to just seem exhausted. It's just been a ping pong kind of market going in different directions, pocked by uncertainty, pocked by depression, pocked by isolation. And I'm wondering, where are we in that cycle? I mean, are people actually starting to look for opportunities, or are people just sort of sitting out and saying, this one I don't understand?
All right. So, I mean, look, the first and foremost, I'd have to address.
All right. Let me roll up my sleeves. Let's go.
Let's do it. The Japanese cross-currency basis, which was the last one to blow, is finally narrowed, and it's narrowed by 50% overnight, right? I mean, you may see that the euro and the pound are now very, very positive, which means they're flush with dollars. So the dollar hoarding, yes, while it still, persists offshore, there's a lot of dollars being thrown at the issue. So I think this whole, thought that there aren't, dollar hoarding, not enough dollars, let's put that to bed for a minute. Now, where are the bottlenecks coming up? They're obviously in credit land. No question about it. You've seen the move in spreads. Everyone's seen it. Everyone's watching it. And it's really the mortgage market that scares me the most. I mean, that was the epicenter back in 2008. We're starting to see some of these mortgage REITs they're unable to meet margin calls. And these aren't just anyone. These are Invesco, Angelo Gordon, TPG. And their portfolios are getting taken over by banks and being liquidated in the market. And it's just, to bring in people in my mind, like, who kind of helped us in the past, like Paulson and Geithner and BlackRock. I mean, while that's all said and good, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'd love to see Simon Potter back at the New York Federal Reserve because, he used to run the markets desk. And if there's one person that know where the landmines are and where the bodies are buried, it's Simon. And so, it's interesting how quiet things have been on that front. I'd really like to just see some more clarity as to how we're going to address some of the bottlenecks that we're seeing abroad. And, we see the cross-currency basis in places like Korea are still pretty wide, that they still don't have enough dollars. And so, we just have to kind of watch all these little elements of the market on the periphery and hope everyone can kind of come out of this okay, I guess. I mean,
yeah. Hey, so, Damien, just in 30 seconds, any place to hide in emerging markets?
So we definitely still like receiving in Indonesia on these spikes. I mean, I think the Indonesian rupee has been one of the better performers today. The peso's come up a long way. You've seen that come all the way back. I like countries that have a geostrategic importance to the United States, if for no other reason than because the U.S. prints dollars. So, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of them that aren't there. And, I think that's where you kind of want to focus if you're looking to wait it out a bit.
Damien Sassower, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your perspective on emerging markets. Lots of volatility, even above and beyond what we're seeing in the broader markets. Damien Sassower, Chief Emerging Markets Credit Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Lisa, just another kind of strong day in the market here. We've got this S&P and Dow up 3.5% and 4% respectively. So just kind of a little bit of a bounce back here. The question is, how much legs does this have? Is this just simply a dead cat bounce, or is it really reflective of something that's going on in Washington?
Ping pong market.
Ping pong market.
That.
We're going to go with that. Very good. S&P up 88 points. That's 2562 on the S&P. The Dow up 844 points. 22,030 on the Dow. This is Bloomberg.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have. I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. I started as a care worker, but with all the training on the job, I'm now a manager here, looking after people like Mimi.
Greg really believes in me and has supported me to make better choices in my life.
6 years ago, I worked in security, keeping people out of places. Now I open doors for people instead. It's a great feeling.
If you want to make a difference to your life, care for someone else's, visit everydaysdifferent.com to find jobs in adult social care.
I love dogs and cats, short-haired, long-haired. I love you all, don't I, Bianca? But I don't love cat hair all over my carpet, which is why I got a job testing vacuum cleaners in the Witch Test Lab. We rub an exact amount of real pet hair into an exact area of real carpet to see which vacuum cleaners really suck it up. And the vacuums that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Imagine winning 10 grand.
Yes!
With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years.
Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to hear from a host of different political figures. We're going to hear from the Washington, D.C. Mayor, Andrew Cuomo, New York State Governor, and of course, Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, who is going to be speaking with Bloomberg's own David Weston. Right now, though, let's get a check on the numbers. Charlie Pellet has that for us with a Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Lisa Abramowitz. Once again, good morning. A lot of us working from home, but we've got you covered on markets with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging again today at or near the session's highs, with stocks rallying as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. Brian Nick is a chief investment strategist at Tiercref Investment Management.
I think we're encouraged by the size of the stimulus package, the composition. There's a multifaceted approach here that helps state and local governments, that should be supporting municipal bond markets. What we really want to see is the effectiveness and the speed of how quickly we can get these loans to small businesses and potentially help them claw back some of the people they may have already laid off.
Speaking of people already laid off, jobless claims surged to a record 3.28 million Americans last week as businesses shut down to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. S&P up now by 81 points. That is a gain of 3.3%. Dow Industrials up 786 points. That's an advance of 3.7%. NASDAQ rallying 211 points, up by 2.9%. 10-year up 24/30 seconds, yield now 0.79%. Gold up 0.9%, 16.31 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 3%, 23.78 a barrel. So again, recapping here, equities higher across the board. S&P 500 index up 84, a gain there of just about 3.4%. Micron Technology shares up 3.1% after giving a revenue forecast that was stronger than expected. The results are seen as a positive sign for the semiconductor industry, which has struggled against the coronavirus pandemic, a headwind that has pressured both supply chains and demand. Recapping, gold up 0.9%. The 10-year, the yield there 0.79%. Equities higher with the S&P up 87, up 3.5%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. This Bloomberg Business Flash was brought to you by Witham, a forward-thinking, technology-driven advisory and accounting firm helping clients be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. Visit Witham.com to learn more. Green on the screen, a risk-on day. Let's see where the action is with small and mid-cap stocks. We do that every day with Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what do you got?
Well, Paul, I mean, what we've got is, among other things, smaller companies leading larger ones in today's trading. Wow. The Russell 2000 index up 4.6%, and that exceeds the S&P 500's gain of 3.5%. The Russell's advance is being led in a big way by real estate investment trusts that invest in mortgages, also known as mortgage REITs. They're surging for a second day after a 5-week plunge. Today's top performer is Granite Point Mortgage Trust, whose ticker is GPMT. The REIT has almost tripled in today's trading. AG Mortgage Investment Trust, ticker MIT, well, that stock has more than doubled. And there are plenty more mortgage REITs in the Russell that have risen more than 50% in today's trading. It just goes to show you how broad the advance is and how steep in this group. Now, Signet Jewelers, ticker SIG, has climbed 37.5%. The owner of retailers Jared K. and Zales reported fiscal fourth quarter earnings and sales that beat analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. And Mistress Group, ticker MG, has risen 17.5%. Fourth quarter profit and revenue at the engineering services company also surpassed projections. Now, one of the Russell's steepest drops belongs to AMN Healthcare Services, whose ticker is AMN. The healthcare staffing company has lost 10.5%. AMN was cut to hold from buy at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, thank you so much for being with us. There's a key question underpinning all market activity these days, and that is the response to the virus, how quickly we can halt it, what the numbers are showing, and how well the United States government is supporting the economy amid this process. Barry Ritholtz has been crunching some numbers. He's a Bloomberg opinion columnist, also founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management, also the host of Masters in Business. You can hear on Bloomberg. It's a terrific podcast. I recommend everybody listen to it. Barry, I want you to come in here after living through 2008, 2009 and the bailouts and TARP and TALF and PPIP and all the acronyms. We're seeing a revival this time around. I want to get your sense of what we've seen so far. Are you impressed, given how quickly the Congress has moved, how quickly, more importantly, the Federal Reserve has moved, and some of the programs that have been reinstated and even built upon since then?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, the Federal Reserve is doing pretty much what they did last time around. They're responding with the bazooka. They're responding quickly. They've seen this movie before. They know how it ends, and they know exactly what they're supposed to do. So to their credit, they recognize this fairly early. We could argue as to whether or not they should have gone to zero as quickly as they did, but hold that aside. I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The flip side of this is the incredible compare and contrast with Congress's behavior this time versus 08. In 08-09, Congress was AWOL. They really did not do much of a fiscal response. They kind of let the Fed do all the heavy lifting. They extended unemployment insurance. They did a temporary tax cut and a few $100 billion in some infrastructure spending. This response is 10 times what the response was in 08-09, and hopefully we will avoid many of the unintended consequences of the last go-round when it was purely monetary and not fiscal.
So, Barry, what do you make of this market in response over the past couple of days in response to what seems to be a bill that is, in fact, getting its way through Congress?
So we really have to be careful to keep our hindsight bias and our narrative fallacies in check, because we all have a tendency, and I see it all day long on financial television, and I hear it on radios. We all have a tendency to try and explain things in a neat little narrative with binary outcomes now that we know what happened. And so really, think back a month and a half ago, the market began its sell-off under the assumption that revenue is going to plummet and profits are going to fall off a cliff, and therefore at all-time highs the market's valuation was wildly excessive given this new information. And that's what the market does. It's very good at making these probabilistic decisions.
Right.
Now, with $2 trillion in fiscal response and $4 trillion in monetary response, the market is saying, at least for now,
Right.
hey, maybe we overdid it in one direction and now we're snapping back in the other direction.
Barry, I've got to cut in here. I'm sorry to say, Barry Ritholtz, founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management. I'm sorry to do this, but Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is holding a briefing on COVID-19 in that region. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Everybody who lives and works in Washington, D.C. So we're going to keep doing what we need to do locally. We're going to keep calling on the White House to step up on the procurement of life-saving supplies. And now we will be working to fix whatever disadvantages this relief package brings to the residents of Washington, D.C. I'll turn to Chairman Mendelson, and then we will be available for any other questions.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, and thank you all for being here. And I want to again acknowledge colleagues who are here with me, the Chair Pro Tem Ward 5 Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie and at-large Councilmember Alyssa Silverman. I'm going to speak a little bit more to what the mayor spoke to with regard to the relief bill going through Congress. It was approved by the Senate last night. We became aware yesterday afternoon when the document was first released how the district was being treated. And while I agree with everything that the mayor said, at the risk of being perhaps a little bit politically incorrect, I'm going to say that this issue, I believe, is not about statehood, but about public health and about the economy. The district, as you know, is seeing the effects of this pandemic, seeing these effects very much. And we are working with our neighbors, that is the states of Virginia and Maryland. But we are not able to stand side by side with them when they are getting at least $1.25 billion and we are getting somewhere, I want to say about a third of that. I guess it's a little bit more, but substantially less than what they are getting. And yet we are trying to move in lockstep with Maryland and Virginia with regard to the public health response. This is about public health. It's about our economy. As a denser jurisdiction, denser than states with large rural areas, we are seeing a greater impact of this virus. Look at the New York City region, a very dense region, which right now is ground zero in the United States. We don't want to be like New York City in terms of the New York City region, in terms of the public health effect of this pandemic, which is why the funding is so important. It is important for public health reasons. It is important for economic reasons. As you know, the district relies on businesses such as tourism and the hospitality industry, which are disproportionately affected by this shutdown. It disproportionately affects us more than other states that are not as dependent on hospitality or tourism, which is why this economic relief from the Congress needs to be equal, at least equal, to what the states are receiving. If you think about it, it makes no sense, and I mean no criticism here, that states like Wyoming or Vermont would get more money than us when the pandemic is clearly far more of an issue and a public health threat here than it is in those states. I'm hopeful, we are hopeful, that the Congress will rectify this shortfall, because this affects people. Again, this is not simply a statehood issue. This is a public health and an economic issue. And we are seeing people suffer economically. We are seeing people suffer in terms of this pandemic, which is why the Senate and the House need to recognize greater relief for the District of Columbia. I again want to thank the mayor and all of my colleagues. We worked together on this letter that we were able to get out with just a couple hours' notice because, like you, we were unaware of this, what the relief was going to look like until yesterday afternoon. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, sir.
So, in regards to the $15 million that you announced going toward the ventilators, some clarification around that. Did that come out of the
Was D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson at a press conference with Washington, D.C. officials. Just some context provided to me by Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro. Washington, D.C. Is having a sort of pushback at this time because it's being treated as a territory, not as a state, meaning that it gets shortchanged by a host of money, which really raises a question. Even within the $2 trillion bill, it's sort of uneven how the money gets distributed. We've seen a lot of pushback from New York saying that there has been not enough money given to plug the hole in the revenue gap with taxes, but also having to do with the healthcare system, which has been completely inundated. Now at the Javits Center being outfitted with hospital beds as well as many ventilators as people can find. Really a focus right now, Paul, on seeing how to address the uneven destruction across states as they one by one get beset by the virus and the effects on the healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that people are starting to see kind of some of the dollar amounts allocated to the various states and regions, the fighting begins for more bigger piece of the pie. Let's go to Nathan Hager right now to get some local color. Nathan down in Washington, D.C. Nathan, what is your sense down there in the district, in the greater metro D.C. area as to the impact of this stimulus?
Well, Martin makes an excellent point. Martin DeCaro, my colleague in the Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington, that because the District of Columbia is a federal city and not a state, it has that different status that raises some questions about whether the district would qualify for the same type of state aid that the 50 states are able to enjoy perhaps from this stimulus package that's still making its way through Congress. Of course, we're waiting to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later on this hour to get a sense of when we might get a vote on that package in the House and get it to President Trump's desk. Of course, millions of people working from home hope that can be done by the end of the week and that aid can start being funneled in. But as far as the District of Columbia goes, it's interesting to hear Council Chairman Phil Mendelson point out some of the similarities that D.C. has with New York City, which is, of course, a hotspot of this pandemic. The district has the same kind of population density issues that New York has, and with that, you expect that the case count is going to continue to go up. The district has closed non-essential businesses, as so many other places across the country have, and set up drive-through testing centers to try to get a handle on this pandemic. But again, with so many cities feeling like they're the hotspots of this outbreak, the aid is desperately needed, Paul.
Well, Nathan, there's a question also of just how prevalent the virus has become. Do we have a sense of the numbers in the D.C. region? I know that in New York, every day it goes up by thousands.
Yeah, and the numbers go up by the hundreds in the D.C. metro area, Lisa, and it raises the question of whether the testing is as prevalent as so many of us would like it to be. The sense is that the curve isn't getting flattened, but the population density in New York is to such an extreme extent compared to so many other cities. But the D.C. metro area is seeing hundreds upon hundreds of new cases every day. So the need is certainly there.
So, Nathan, Governor Cuomo has made it a big point to really highlight, and he's done it consistently, the potential and the lack of hospital beds, ICU beds, just total beds in general, and how that is a huge risk for New York City. Is it, I'm assuming, a similar issue and risk in the district?
Yeah, we're seeing that as well, Paul. We've heard that the United Health Center in Washington, D.C. is going to be converted into a testing center, for one thing, but it's a similar situation in the nation's capital as well, that so many of these hospital centers are having to discharge patients who don't have COVID-19 so that they can focus almost exclusively on this pandemic.
Yeah, Nathan Hager, thank you so much for the color. We'll be checking back with you throughout the next few hours. There is a question, Paul, I was reading through why the transmission rate is so high in New York. Is it simply that there is better testing? And there was one supposition, a hot take, that New York City subway polls might be somewhat to blame. And everybody who has ever lived in New York City and taken the subway says, yeah, no kidding. Max Neeson has been riding the subways and is fully aware of the transmission mechanism that is the subway poll. He joins us now. He covers healthcare for Bloomberg Opinion, always providing good insights. Where are we when it comes to flattening the curve or not doing that if we listen to Governor Cuomo?
There are some very limited promising signs. The rate at which New York hospitalizations are doubling seems to be coming down a little bit. Of course, that's less reassuring when you take into account that it's doubling still and off of a much higher number. So there's still a ways to go before we can really declare that the curve is flattening or has flattened in New York City and even less so anywhere else. There's still other parts of the country where testing isn't as prevalent and where there haven't been, as stringent of social distancing measures. There are reasons. They've seen less cases, they're less dense. But that just means that there, in all likelihood, there's a lot of spread that we just haven't caught elsewhere. So a long fight to come, unfortunately.
Max, give us a sense of where are we on testing. It appears that the testing is really ramped up in the metro New York area. Do the officials feel like they're getting a good handle on the scope?
That's certainly true about the New York area, and testing more broadly is ramping up elsewhere. The fact that it's been slow to roll out is still going to have consequences. There's still places that are having to, one way or another, ration testing, either because of overwhelming demand or things like not having the proper reagents. So it's going to be a bit before we're in every place that it needs to be at the level that we'd like to be, but it's definitely gotten better. In terms of catching the full prevalence, that's going to be tough without both really widespread testing and also different kinds of tests. So not just these sort of acute PCR tests that you get when you're symptomatic or think you've been exposed, but also these broader so-called serology tests that can detect whether you've been exposed at all and have developed protective antibodies. That's really useful both for kind of detecting, places where we haven't seen spread, but the virus actually is present, and also for knowing who might have developed immunity. So you can do sort of a smart, spaced out return to work and also know healthcare workers that are going to be safer. So it's going to be both expanding the current type of testing and also new tests as well. And there's work continuing on that.
I know markets are very closely watching the number count and trying to get a good handle on when we could see the peak and then tapering off of some of the numbers. But I was riveted by the New York Times story looking at the hospital system, particularly in Brooklyn, and how overwhelmed it is, how they're running out of room for dead bodies around the city, in Queens as well, as morgues fill up, and the lack of safety for some of the healthcare workers. Can you talk a little bit about where we're at with that? Because Governor Cuomo yesterday was saying that now they have the equipment they need to protect themselves, and that should be a changed picture. Do we have any sense of whether the strain on the healthcare system is alleviating a little bit?
I don't think it will alleviate much anytime soon, unfortunately. Per Governor Cuomo's guidance, which is based on statistical modeling, based on the available data that we have, it's only likely to get worse, and we're still some weeks away from the peak here and possibly further away in other parts of the country. Unfortunately, when it comes to epidemics, when it comes to this virus, what we know today or what we know yesterday is a lagging indicator. This disease takes a couple weeks, it takes a week or more to show up, and it takes a while. People could have been exposed at the very beginning of social distancing or before they start to take it seriously. They won't show up for a while, or people that, unfortunately, infect family members. It's going to keep coming for a while to come, which really emphasizes the importance of both broadening and then taking really seriously these social distancing measures. So we do our best to
to avert overloading the hospitals to the greatest extent possible. But it's going to be a little bit before they can do anything but continue to build capacity and add things like that coming hospital ship, build beds in the Javits Center. That kind of thing is going to have to continue, and it's going to happen outside of New York too.
Max, anything new on the treatment front? I understand that some of the treatments, that the malaria-related treatments, perhaps may not be applicable here.
So ongoing testing for that and other treatments, both by the World Health Organization and within the United States. Not much in the way of updates. I think everyone's working as fast as they can, trying to preserve that malaria treatment, even though it's uncertain for really severe patients. It's something that unfortunately just requires patience. You need to collect data, you need to analyze it, you need to be sure about these things to avoid, doing things that are ineffective or actually bringing people to harm. So I'm still going to have to wait to see what actually works.
We're speaking with Max Neeson of Bloomberg Opinion, a columnist covering all things health-related. And I'm wondering, I keep reading conflicting things, Max, about younger people versus older people, and that younger people are getting sicker than they had expected, or a greater proportion of the sick individuals in New York are younger. Can you offer any insights into that?
Sure. With the caveat that not a physician, just someone who does a lot of reading and talking to physicians, but the
including family members. You're my in-house
family members.
Yes.
My little sister is in a resident in Seattle right now. But the sense that young people can and do get really sick and they can progress really rapidly. That's sort of one of the defining characteristics of this disease, that you progress from mild to really serious symptoms pretty rapidly, and that a variety of different pre-existing conditions can expose you to greater risk. So it just, again, doubling down again, you can't say it enough, how important these social distancing measures are, and that, you being young doesn't confer a sense of invincibility, and people shouldn't behave as it does, both for themselves and because you don't know who in your life may be more vulnerable than you.
Max Neeson, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your perspective on the healthcare angle of what's going on here with the coronavirus. Max Neeson, Bloomberg Opinion healthcare columnist, joining us. And Lisa, so we're still, I think by Max's reporting, still in the early stages here, and there's a lot more to be done. But certainly testing is ramping up, but so are the occupancy of the beds in New York City and other places. The ICU beds maybe hitting capacity tomorrow. So lots of issues there. We will bring the conversation forward as markets continue to rally here. We will have more for you. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Jobless claims surging to a record 3.28 million Americans last week as businesses shut down to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. While the reading exceeded estimates, investors are speculating the $2 trillion rescue package poised past Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. That's lifting stocks, with the Dow up more than 900 points. Mortgage rates fell for the first time in 3 weeks, but would-be home buyers are frozen in fear of an economic meltdown. The average rate for a 30-year fixed loan, 3.5%. Ford plans to resume vehicle production in Mexico on April 6th, with some U.S. plants cranking up again about a week later. North American production has been shut down since March 19th. And HP has again asked shareholders to reject a takeover offer from Xerox. The personal computer maker said that a complex merger would be disastrous in the midst of shocks to the economy. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
you are.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Attention, all units on tactical. Rhymes in the
Boys, just pick a track. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car, so don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
Hot, tasty, and ready in seconds. That's how most people like their coffee. I know because I used to have a coffee van outside London Bridge Station. Now I test coffee machines in the Which Test Lab. We find the machines that make the right amount of hot, tasty coffee time and time again. And the ones that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Ah, perfect. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, tune in for a conversation with Nancy Pelosi. We discuss the coronavirus rescue plan with the House Speaker coming up at 11:40 a.m. Wall Street time right here on Bloomberg Radio. But first, let's go to Charlie Pellet and get a Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Paul Sweeney. Another day of fast-moving markets. The Dow with a 1,000 handle right now. S&P with a 100 handle. Stocks are rallying as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on on the economy. We'll have more coming up with Nancy Pelosi in just a moment right here on Bloomberg Radio. Here's where we stand. S&P up 113 points now. That is a gain of 4.5%. The Dow up 1,063, higher by 5%. NASDAQ up 292 points, higher by 4%. 10-year up 1930 seconds. The yield there 0.80%. Gold up 0.9%, 16.31 the ounce, and a pullback for West Texas Intermediate crude, dropping 4.4% right now, down $1.07 a barrel, 23.44 on WTI. Brent 27.18. It is lower now by 0.8%. So the S&P 500 index extending its advance today, could be 3 in a row. Stay with us right through the closing bell to find out how things shake out. Jobless claims, the other major story today, hitting a record 3.3 million last week, more than quadruple the prior record set in the 1980s. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
It's the biggest insight yet into the toll the pandemic is inflicting on the world's largest economy. Employers are shuddering as the nation grapples with this deadly outbreak. Bank of America economist Michelle Meyer calls it an abrupt plunge in a recession. State unemployment agencies are in overdrive to get money to the workers of every town USA. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
The 10-year up 1930 seconds, the yield 0.80%. Again, gold up 0.9%. Recapping on the equity numbers here, a 116-point jump in the S&P 500 index, up by 4.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. When we talk about the economic carnage stemming from the coronavirus, we really need to focus our attention on restaurants, which have been uniquely hammered. They've been forced to shut their doors in a lot of places across the United States. And there's a question of how quickly they will be able to get back online and how many of them will even survive throughout this. Mike Halen joining us now, senior restaurant analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone. Mike, do you have a sense of the proportion of restaurants that have closed their doors that will easily get back up and going? And I know you look specifically at a lot of the chains that have already closed their doors.
Yeah, so, it's really going to depend on the business model, right? So, in our world with the publicly traded chains, if you're fast food and you're doing, between 50 and 70% of your business through the drive-through and probably another 15 to 20 via delivery, you're not going to be impacted as much. I mean, granted, you are going to be impacted. There are less people commuting to work, right? People aren't going out and running errands and doing some shopping and stopping for a burger while they're out so much, and they're doing a lot more shopping at the grocery store and cooking at home. So sales are still going to be down. But if you're fast food and you have a drive-through, you're in pretty good shape. But for casual dining, for full-service restaurants, it's a very, very different situation. For example, Texas Roadhouse, a great chain, they only do about 7% of their sales in to-go, and they don't have any delivery, and obviously they don't have any drive-through. So, in casual dining land, for restaurants that close their dining room, they could lose, between 75 and 90% of their sales.
So, Mike, give us a sense of kind of how these companies are trying to cope with it. Will they make it? How are they trying to kind of deal with this complete lack of revenue?
Yeah, so for the casual dining chains, and now we're starting to see with fast food chains as well, they're fully drawing down on their revolving credit facilities. They're suspending buybacks and suspending their dividends to try to hold on to whatever cash flow and raise whatever cash they can. They're closing stores where it makes sense, and they're trying to push delivery and to go as much as possible, try to grow that business as quickly as possible so that they can continue to employ some of their employees, stay in front of the customers for whenever this does end. Chains are kind of doing whatever they can, but, we expect a lot of store closures. We also saw a note yesterday out that said Cheesecake Factory is saying they're not going to pay rent until they can reopen. So, rents are a pretty big expense. Even if you're shut, the rent bill continues to keep coming. So we expect to hear a lot more of this as well, where the restaurant chains are going to maybe hold off on paying rent until they can open their doors again.
Mike, I wonder how much this just accelerates a trend that already was in place, because we saw restaurant traffic go down at some of these casual dining places even before the coronavirus and even amid a really good consumer confidence. I mean, how many of these bankruptcies would have happened anyway?
Yeah, well, and also there's been, low interest rates helping to keep zombie chains alive for quite some time, right? So, yeah, I agree. I think this is definitely going to speed up the process. You're going to see some of the casual dining chains that do not have a loyal customer base any longer start to close even more stores. I mean, we've seen a lot. We've seen chains like Applebee's, close a lot of stores over the last couple of years. We expect store closures to